Hello, everyone. Sorry for the delay. We're having technical difficulties in real time as you guys get to experience with us here in real time as well because of the fact that this is live. We've got Dan with us now, and I think we have one more person joining us. But today we're going to be talking about. We got someone who's got a big time echo. I think it's you, Dan, because you just joined. Basically, we're going to be talking about MK Ultra programming. We're going to be talking about, it's going to be, so just a fair warning to people, this is not going to be a conversation for the faint of heart. It's going to go to some dark places, but it's not for no reason. We're trying to transmute this energy and combat these programs and what they're doing to us and to other people that we love, and that's why we're here. So, obviously, if you're watching the show, you know who I am. I'm going to let everybody kind of introduce themselves. Nate's having technical difficulties, by the way. That's what's going on. People are asking in the chat. He's here.
I'm here. I have no camera because all of a sudden my camera no longer works on either computer, which is out of the blue. But I do have a microphone.
Well, that's good. Then Dan, do you want to introduce yourself, or do you guys? I actually don't even know you, Dawn. Maybe you could introduce yourself.
Or let's put you on mute.
My name is Dawn White, and I was a targeted individual for approximately 20 years. I found a way out of the harassment. I'm an astral traveler, a time jumper, a hypnotherapist, a Reiki master, and a couple of other things. But that's just a general introduction.
Anyway, I hope you like my picture. I've grown some facial hair lately.
You can always reboot too, Nate. That usually fixes most problems.
Oh no, I've already done all that.
Oh really?
I put my webcam on my laptop, and it doesn't work there either, and it's not coming on. The light's not coming on, so they couldn't verify me, and I had to enter in a code to access to Windows. But this is it, man.
This is thanks to our good friends in the intelligence community. Just in case you're wondering where your tax dollars go, people.
Yeah, they go to this stuff.
Yeah.
Ark, you're off. You're actually muted.
Could Michael Kameron please introduce himself to the audience? I'm sorry about that. I didn't realize I was muted.
Hi guys. Yeah, I'm Michael Kameron. I'm a British author from the United Kingdom. Of the book High Strangeness, A Lifetime of Alien and Paranormal Encounters. I describe myself as an alien abductee from birth, a MyLab, a veteran of the SSP, and I'm a public speaker that often speaks out, topics relating to disclosure.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for that introduction. So are you guys all familiar with alter programming?
Yeah. Definitely.
Yes.
Okay, because that's a lot of what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about.
I think that's a good one to sort of go over. Yesterday, our team, I was talking to someone, and they were like, they didn't understand the difference between aspects, like when people can have aspects of certain things versus alters. So maybe we should just do the ABCs of like how people can understand our terminology when we're saying alters. Like, I don't know. What do you think?
Sure. So basically, for people who aren't aware, in these MK Ultra, if you want to call them that, that's become a blanket term. These mind control programs. They use a form of trauma-based mind control programming, where they split the person's personality through torture and other means, and they create different personalities, which they then program for different purposes and reasons. And basically, the the current what do you call psychological community, I don't know, psychologists, things like that, they recognize DID is real. And not only that, there are DID specialists, licensed hypnotherapists and things like that. One of them being Corydon Hammond, who's still with us today, thankfully. But basically, they actually specialize in dealing with patients who have been targeted in these programs, and this is usually linked to satanic ritual abuse, because a lot of these programs that are taking people against their will are obviously dark programs. Dark forces are behind them. If they were positive, they would get your consent and not erase your memory. So yeah, you that's what we're dealing with basically, on a simple level. And what certain alters will be programmed to do certain things. There's sex kitten or bunny boy alters, which is basically like sex alters, so sex slave alters. And then there's also different names for them, and I unfortunately don't have all the terminology in front of me right now. But basically, like, for example, like Omega programming would be like the unaliving programming, like, to get rid of yourself. And then there's other programming too, just like self-sabotage programming. There's warrior programming, killer programming. So certain alters, basically, usually the different alters that they create are usually created with an intended purpose, and a certain personality that reflects their intended purpose. And that's how these programs are able to use people against their will, and they're also able to take your consciousness from your body in one of these disassociated, altered states where you're a different person, but you're the same person, and then you got a different name, and everything, and they'll put that into a clone body, a different body. And I just want to point out as well, for the people who like evidence, something that really I think is confounding to everybody who looks into this issue, including mainstream psychologists and stuff like that, is the fact that a lot of these alters will have different nationalities, different genders, things like that. And so these people, they have like these personalities that are so like not really. Basically, I'm getting at is they think that's a manifestation of the fact that they're cloning people and they're using their consciousness in these programs for various purposes, and it's a side effect of that. And I think that, as usual, even the fringes of the mainstream, the guys who are looking into this, they're a little slow to catch up with what's going on. Like, for instance, a lot of them look at some of the stuff that their patients are talking about very hypothetically, even though it's quite real. Like, for instance, when their patients claim to be telepathic, they look at that hypothetically, but that's real, etc. Also, they might not totally believe in the time travel stuff and all that when we talk about it, but they understand that we're experiencing something very real, and that there are guys, men and women, who are in this field, who got into it just because they're trying to help people, and they're finding out that this stuff is real, and I think that if there's anything to look into when it comes to proof of this, it's that. So yeah, that's where the alter programming comes in. That's how they're able to take people and not remember. And something that I also want to make clear too is a lot of people have this idea with these black military programs that are using people. They have this idea that, like, a portal opens up in your wall, your ceiling, or your floor, or whatever the hell it is, and these people pop out and they grab you and they take you, and that's how it all happens. When the reality is that a lot of us, in fact I would say most of us, have alters, and you will wake up on your own volition as another person and go off and do things, go through a portal. And because of the time travel aspect, like with portals, like, you can go right back to, you can spend however long you want on the other side of that portal, and then when you open a portal to go home, just open it in that same time space. So time travel is a part of it too. That's how they're able to take so much from us and have us not realize it, is the fact that they're using time travel and cloning. And so that's where this all comes together, and that's what this Disclosure Now channel is all about, is trying to get people to understand that this is real, that clones are real, that yeah, this is being used for basically slavery of various different purposes, and we're just here dealing with being, I guess, a lot of us in this disclosure community are more like, a lot of us are, for lack of a better term, like more high tier assets. So the fuckery we deal with is pretty intense. Like the programming that we have is pretty intense. So the point of the show wasn't to just like, you know, complain about the programming that we have. We're gonna vent a little bit. We're gonna go through the reality of it, but we're gonna try to present solutions, and basically we're all in this together and we're working through it. So that's basically kind of the idea behind this. And I know that Nathan really wanted to touch also on the Omega programming, which is unalive programming. So I don't know, we could just use the word unaliving, I guess, and they won't censor me. It's so stupid how you gotta dance around words, but yeah. So that's one of the things you want to talk about too. There's very real threats, like some of these people that we hear of where they and it's just dark stuff. It's hard to even say it aloud, but some of these people that you hear of where they're like, all of a sudden a guy goes crazy, kills his whole family and kills himself, or it's a woman can do it too. Women do it too. Men, it's more common for men, but a lot of these are assets that got memories that they deactivate and put out of commission, or because they're not useful to them anymore. And so that's like yeah, it's just scary, the stuff that they're able to do with this. Like, it's really dangerous, and that's why we want to talk about it and address it, because the like, people don't understand this stuff. They don't understand alters. They don't understand the clones. They don't understand the time travel, and that's how they'll get away with it. Like, you know.
Yeah. I mean, I think too, it's not always important to understand, as I put it, we don't need to know how we make sausage. You know, when it comes down to a lot of this stuff, how does it happen, who's doing it, et cetera, et cetera. You know, that's one thing. But I think it's very easy to let that stuff get caught to get caught in those details, instead of focusing on to what we just need to do to be equipped to have the strength to survive the programming, and sort of to understand it a bit better, seeing it from other people's perspectives who share it, and realizing that these aren't just personal things, but something that we're all experiencing. We are sharing, and so that we can see it in a more objective way. I think that's really important. And I want to add too, you know, a lot of times it's hard when people hear words like, you know, the ritual abuse and that, but, you know, I think the way I like to put it is that the MK projects and stuff like this are really just a scientific form of what was ritual abuse performed since ancient times, right? That these things are parts of like families and have been passed down through generations in different societies and that. So, you know, that's a big part of it, and we don't need to worry too much about the time travel and that. We do need to know that, you know, at the end of the day, our clones, we just need to know that, like, people have been deliberately traumatized at a certain age, so for the purpose of creating a compartmentalized brain, which is very important for security purposes, so that information doesn't leak. And in doing that, it's very possible for people to be completely unaware of other things that they have been doing, that they've been involved with, because of that compartmentalization. And I think that's a really important part to look at, right? Like, when we're starting to talk about, you know, whether it's Omega programming or anything else, it's interesting how the different identities work. Anyway, I'll just stop there. I think it's a really great topic, and I'm excited to hear what you guys want to say.
Yeah, I personally have been dealing with this programming quite hardcore, and I normally do deal with them fucking with my life during this time of the year, because this is the time of the year where the veil is thin. So my manifestation, and really everybody's manifestations powers, are amplified during this time. So what they do usually is they try to, of course, sabotage that. And so I basically have been doing pretty great and getting a lot of things done. Been doing the show, and I've been pretty proud of myself. But there's some stuff that I've been wanting to make happen that's pretty important, and they're trying to sabotage me. So I've had these alters that come out, and it's bad. It's really bad. Like, I actually have an alter who, and like I said, this isn't for the faint of heart, people. I'm just being really real. He'll come out and he'll like start punching me in the face, like start like attacking me, and it's like moments of like when I fail at something, or like I drop something, or if I'm clumsy or whatever. I'll have this alter come forward and he'll just like be like, "You moron, you stupid piece of shit," like start beating the fuck out of me. Like my head hurts from punching myself. And yesterday he's literally saying, "I want blood." He's punching me in the face. And it was really terrifying. And then I had another, and so this, after, as this is happening, this happens yesterday, my girlfriend's freaking out. She's like, "Stop punching yourself, please." And she's like, "You can't come by me," because she's like afraid. And this alter comes forward and he says, "My name's Roger." He said, "I can get a lot of trouble for telling you this, but like basically, I got this thing that I'm trying to do. I don't really want to put it out there because you don't do that with magic. But basically, like, he just said that like this thing that he's trying to do is really important. This is why this has all happened. This is why these programs are kicking in. It's because he's doing good, and they don't want him to do good." And he just explained like I need to pull through, and just explain some helpful information. And so another interesting thing from that too is like I don't mean to go off on too much of a tangent, but I connected with him in that moment, and that alter is not human. That alter was a human gray hybrid. And what I think too is like when I was like 12 or 13 years old, I had one of those moments where I like asked to see Jesus, you know what I mean, and like prayed to God and I wanted to see Jesus. And what I saw was a gray alien hybrid in some room in a deep underground military base, lying on a table, and he was like strapped down, he was trapped there. And I saw his eyes and he said, "Help me." And then it went away. That's what happened to me when I like tried to see Jesus. And like I think that like that was him. That was my alter. That was me. That was Roger. And what he told me is he's a control program. So like he is inside my mind as an alter, doing stuff to try to control me, and that's his job. And he said that. He explained that to Kat. And then he also said that he told me that like he also is telepathically connected to me because he's a gray, and they make him like influence my emotions and influence me and stuff like that. And so he, in a way, is the program that's been like sabotaging me and making me depressed and trying to fuck me up. They basically, what they do is they make him depressed and make him miserable, and then I'm connected to him, and it makes me miserable. So like that's what they've been doing, is they've been fucking with Roger. And like, he said, "I'm going to get tortured for telling you this, but I don't care because they're already torturing me. Like, it's like my life's already hell." So, you know what I mean? Like, and he knows that the reason why they're doing this shit, why they're making him do all this, why they're, torturing him and by extension me, is because he knows that I'm on the cusp of accomplishing great things and like being like a champion of the disclosure movement in a big way. Like he knows like I'm on the brink of that, and they're trying to sabotage it, because let's be honest right now, like it's not getting the attention it deserves, this movement. We have a lot of work to do if we want this to actually change the world. And I think that we're getting some momentum right now, and I just can feel it. Like I just know they're trying to take the wind out of my sails, and that's a real big part of. I'm gonna shut up soon, but I just want to, because this will open up to people to be able to say a lot of stuff. Like really, anyone can take the floor off after this. Is the fact that they like, what's fucked up about it is they control our lives to the point where like they're always doing this to all of us. Like as soon as things start going good, they take the fucking wind out of your sails somehow. They try to sabotage you, and so like as soon as you're like, "Oh, I'm gonna be like, this is it, I'm happy, I'm doing good," like something in your life is going to happen every fucking time. Like And it's not like just like, oh, poor me kind of thing. And I'm not trying to complain and just be that guy like poor me, but it's true. Like they literally do not want us to be happy. Dan Winters talks about how if we have our bliss, like they can't stop us. Like if we're happy, if we come from a place of power and not like weakness, right? So that you need to be content, you need to be happy. Like you're unfuckwithable. So that's why they're always doing whatever they can within their power to make us not happy. Like it seems like they're just sadistic and they're just doing it because they like to torture us, but there's actually a purpose behind it. They're afraid of us, and they're doing it to make us weak because they don't want us to have. They don't want us to unleash the power that we have inside us. And so if they make us miserable, in doing so, they take that power from us.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. And that sheds a lot of light on some of the things that I've been through. And I just wanted to say real quick, thank you to everybody who showed up today. This is very important what we're doing. And, I feel like we're riding a crest of a wave. And this is the start of it. And I think our team would also support that and would also agree with it. And so I just want to thank everybody for participating in this and everybody in the chat. This is something that's needed. It's something that we needed to do a long time ago that we never did. And we focused on these wild stories and experiences. We never get down to the human side of this. I'm really proud of everybody for coming here today. Thank you. And as far as these altars go, yeah, it sheds a lot of light on what I've been through, because I've got one altar that comes through, and it's just been one, and it's only been in the last few months. But I've had, over the course of my life, a lot of personality shifts. This includes sexual orientation. This includes just really who I am. It's fundamentally me inside, but there's layers on top of it that are switched and just shuffle like a deck of cards. And those layers change my perspective, my behavior, and how I think. And it pretty much, changes me, even though it's a part of me. And it's very difficult in order, to deal with that. And, the Omega programming plugs right into this because they use that against you too. And it's, like you're saying, Arkheim, as soon as you start to gain a little bit of momentum in your life, they knock your ass right back down again. And if they don't do that, then of course we start to reach our potential. But the other alternative to that is to lock us into a contractual type of agreement, either to get us to shut up or to do something. And of course, the offer always is the same. If you give us full control over you, we will stop the pain. We will stop the suffering. And I'll be damned if I do that, because it is damnation. I'm not going to settle for that. I'm only going to settle for freedom.
Yeah, a moment that I had that was, and I'm going to refrain from using his name in the future. I've been using it. I'm going to keep it out of my mouth. He's my brother. But something that I found out that really screwed me up is, I'm Penny's son, Penny Bradley's son. And I have a half brother, and he's more, he obeys them in the here and now, even in his normal day-to-day life, like he's working for them, even in the here and now, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I've always been very vocal about, like, how I think he's despicable for what he's doing and all this stuff, but I found out on the show I did with Penny that they threatened his kids. Like, they threatened his children.
Oh.
And they basically said, you got to choose between having your mom in your life or having your children in your life. And if you want your children in your life, you basically need to say that she's full of shit, that she's crazy, and you basically need to do a smear campaign on your own mother. And he did it. And I thought that was so scummy of him, but when I found out, how much of an idiot am I? Of course they're threatening his kids and stuff. And that's this whole thing with me. And that's the reason. So for me, my whole life, I don't form attachments with people. I move around a lot. I have a lot of friends, but I don't get too attached to anybody. You want to know why I do that? So they can't use anybody against me. That's like a defense mechanism. And it's maybe part of the programming too, because they don't want you to get close to people. But I just know from the programs, okay, I have a beautiful baby boy, right? I've had this happen in the programs. I've had a child, right? And it's so happy, the best thing in the world is what you would think, right? It's part of the human experience, having a child, watching them grow. It's not like that if you're in the programs. That is now a bargaining chip that they have to use against you. You know what I mean? That's all. Anybody you love or anything you love is a bargaining chip. Because like even like when they're communicating to you in these time bubbles and they're trying to tell you like what you can and can't do and control you, they can go back and edit shit. They can make it so people that you love weren't even born. Stuff like that. And it's like when they have that kind of power, like it's really hard to say no to them. It's really hard to not listen to them. It's really hard to not do what they tell you. Like for instance, like I was doing like pretty horrendous things at Montauk. Like genocide, like slaughtering entire villages and stuff like that to get rid of their DNA. And I would do it because if I would do that, they would let me spend time with my trauma twin, my partner, who I loved. And it was like if you've ever watched the new Star Wars with Anakin going through his dark story arc, it was much like that where he was doing all these evil things, but he thought he was doing it out of love to be with her. That was me. And when she found out the shit that I was doing to be with her, she couldn't even look at me anymore. She couldn't love me anymore. It was the contradiction of that love. And I've literally said to her, like, I love you so much, it scares me. And she said, I know, it scares me too. And like that was like a really powerful moment between us where I was like, it just shook me to the core. Like, yeah, it is scary. It's fucking love can be a really terrifying thing sometimes. Like if you're willing to do anything to be with a person and you're being controlled by these people, like it gets dark. Like even just like the most what you think would be a pure thing, your love for another person is just basically turned into like gasoline, fuel to the fire of their machine that they try to fucking keep turning. You know what I mean? It's just an absolutely disgusting thing.
Everything's weaponized, for sure. For sure. Yeah, I think that's one of probably the most common things that you remember is the threats. There's always the threats. And it started from a very young age, right? Because I think even as, you know, at a young age, you can still have the conscience and say it's wrong, you don't want to participate. And this is largely how people are continued against their will to do these things. Anyway.
Another thing that they can do too is like, I've had it happen where I'll tell them, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to take over this whole interview, but
yeah.
But I had something that happened to me that's relevant. Like, you know, so another brother of mine in these programs, and I'll use his name publicly because we're not in bad blood or anything like that, is John Whitberg. We have the same father, different mother, and shit, what was I gonna say about him? They blanked it. They blanked it. Like this shit. Like just fucking A. So okay, now I remember. He told me one day like he can literally swap with his alters. Like he's like, yeah, it was nice. I was able to just like hang out in the office on a spaceship. I'm like, holy shit, that has got to be crazy. And like but like I actually talked to like one of his alters, and so I was like, what's me? She's like, what do you want to know? I'm like, what's the version of me that you know doing? And he's like, oh, he's on vacation with his family to New Atlantis. I'm like, oh, cool. Didn't really think anything of it. Then that night, lucky me, because of that conversation, I get fucking kidnapped. And they're asking me, they're like, what is your alter doing on New Atlantis? And I'm like, I guess he's on vacation with his family. Like I don't know. Like, they apparently it was one of the tall whites too. I call him the Ice King because he wears blue. He's got the big beard. He just reminds me of the Ice King from Adventure Time. But anyway, like he's like, yeah, we know that you're going to try to go to this museum and steal this like ancient golden disc. Like that's apparently what I was there for. They're like, we know what you're there for. And we're not going to do it. And like, so this alter is like the German, like Nachtwaffen one, the one they're talking about. Whereas this tall white, he's Solar Warden. So they're not the same, right? Like Solar Warden and Nachtwaffen, like they're different. And they're kind of competing in a lot of ways. And so, yeah, he's just like, he just like is like, you basically like, you can't do this is what he told me. And he pulled out, so I have a son that died in a river accident. And I'm pretty sure when he activated, he was my alter Ryan. So basically, there was like, I'll go fly fishing with my son, and an alarm went off. And basically, when the alarms went off on the colony, because it was a new colony, I was one of the people who had to be on deck and go and figure out what was going on. So I was just like, hey, just don't go to that part of the water because the current's strong. It'll pull you in and you could die. I fucking told him that. He didn't listen to me. And my son literally died. All because the alarm went off and it was for something stupid. It was for something that didn't even like matter. And then basically like when I was talking to who I call the Ice King, like there was a room full of clones. And it was people I cared about, like people I loved. And he's like, look, we can activate any of these people. And he brought my son out. And he was confused. He didn't know where he was or why and shit. And he was just like, look, like, we're going to torture your son if you don't listen to us. We know you talk to your alters. We know you're able to do it. He's like, tell your alter not to do this or whatever. So then the next day, like, as I remember this all, I reach out to this alter and I talk to him, and he lied to me. They lie to you. Your alters will lie to you. But he was just like, oh, it was all a misunderstanding. We talked. And they did talk. Solar Warden and Nachtwaffen did talk, and he did not do the whole fucking thing. There was no trying to take the golden disc or whatever. But, like, that's just an example of, like, you think it's just the surface level stuff that they do in your life that you remember, but I guarantee you they're doing this to, like, any Black Ops operative. Like, they have clones of people that you love, and they can use them against you at any time. People that are dead, even. Like, think how fucked up that is. Like he was dead. And then, like, they bring him back just to fuck with me. Like, that's just a really... I want people to understand this stuff. That's why I'm public, is to, like, have people understand how depraved these people are. We have to stop them. You know what I mean? Like, we really have to stop them. I wonder what happened to Dan.
I don't know. Maybe his feet cut out.
I want to hear more from Michael and Dawn, though. I'm new to you guys. I kind of want to hear, like, your perspective, like, your stories, like, of, like, you dealing with your programming and, like, hopefully, like, how you kind of get through it and survive.
I mean, what you were saying, though, Ark, is, about your... when they target you and, when you're in a higher energy, this is the reason why it's so important for all of us to come together in this community and, band together and support each other. But what you said, they are actually afraid of us. They're afraid of us hitting those high points and, sharing this information. I mean, I did a podcast not long ago, and literally it was 2 hours long. And when I, when I do podcasts, sometimes I'm speaking about my book that I wrote, which is like a memoir going back to when I was a child to about the age of 17. But a lot of the time now, when I speak on podcasts, I generally speak about the military side. I talk about the Monarch Project, alters, because I want people to become aware of these type of things. And I'm much more vocal now about, and speaking to an audience of people that are outside of our communities, part of the general public. These are the people that we need to reach out to inform, to educate about what's going on. I mean, we need to do it in stages, like we're doing here, and breaking it down, what the alters are, what the Monarch Project is.
I also think a big tool in the toolbox when you're trying to kind of educate people on MK Ultra and all this stuff is you might not start with the clones and the time travel. You might want to ease them away into it, like meet people where they're at. Because if you just go right into the hardcore, heavy duty shit, it's hard to wrap your mind around. But when you arrive to that point, slowly, instead of like being presented with the most wild stuff immediately, that's a little more palpable for people, I think. So obviously on this channel we're going deep in it, and that's just how it is. But when it comes to like approaching, like you said, the more normal people, like what we need to do it more slowly, and also they love evidence. So that there is evidence, so the more evidence we find, the more it helps our cause.
Of course, yeah. I mean, we use baby steps for them. We break it down in these, in steps that they can more or less, digest. And I think it'll be a lot longer when process to speak about the topic.
Yeah, and I think the dominoes are falling. Like, think about what's going on with Diddy and stuff like that. You're seeing people are talking about Beyonce and these dark, because she's like a satanic priest. Like, I mean, it couldn't be more obvious, right? And all these people sort of worship her that are part of this cult, and it's all coming out. Like, even the normies are talking about this stuff now, and they're aware. And it used to be kind of like a joke, like an inside joke, like everybody knew it was real. But since it was presented as a joke, people kind of like, oh no, it's not real. But now, like, the joke is wearing off. It's not funny anymore, and like people are realizing, like, really, yeah, I don't know. They keep on saying in the chat that everybody other than me basically is quiet. Like, Nate's quiet. Michael, I guess, is quiet. I guess everybody's really quiet. I don't know how we can fix that.
I mean,
if I could see myself, I would probably say more. But I'll talk. But it's actually going through.
Let's see
Well,
if
I can tell you, Arkheim, that they had used my family members. They told me that if I didn't stop doing what I was doing, which was I would meet them in the astral level and I would do things to mess up their plans. And they did not like that. And they kept telling me, if you don't stop, we are going to start hurting your family members. And they started hurting them. And because I wouldn't stop. And these things that I did where I would go in and remove huge demons from like the Vatican and places like that, like go to the Black Cube and remove that energy. And I mean, really, really big things. And I was very effective at it because they trained me. So they made me the monster that they did not want to experience, and I just flipped the script and turned it against them. And then they said that they used my family against me, and I was like, look, you can't use my family against me because you're going to fucking kill them anyway. It doesn't matter if I stop or if I don't stop. Your plan is to ruin humanity. So if you think that that's going to make me stop, it's not. What I am going to do is I am going to protect my family. And that's what I started doing. I just started protecting my family and did not stop, harassing them from the astral plane. And I don't bargain. I don't bargain with them at all.
Well, I've admittedly learned, that a lot of the times they'll break their promises, but sometimes it's hard for me to not listen to them. And I do know that, for me, it's been sometimes harder to, a lot of times I've obeyed them because I'm afraid of them hurting the people I love or whatever. But I think you make a good point when you say, like, well, if their end goal is destroying humanity and destroying everything we love, then really there's nothing like worth propping up that kind of energy. You know what I mean? So,
as a matter of fact, what I did was I turned the tables. I said, if you touch any of my family members, I am coming after whoever did it. And then I would. And they would pay for it. You know what I mean? Like, they did not get off the hook with me. If they touched my family members and I knew it was in one of these funky, weird ways, I just would trace the energy back to the one giving the orders to mess with my family, and then I would annihilate them the best way that I could. And that's what I did. And it got to the point where they backed off because we are way more powerful than they are. They are terrified of us. You know, and rightfully so. They should be terrified of us. You know, because if we were unleashed, they wouldn't stand a chance. I mean, just me alone, I know that I have foiled many of their plans, and like I said, I don't stop, and their threats are they just don't bother me anymore. I'm like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah, I think that there's a tide turning, you know, and I have a lot of amnesia when it comes to these things, but yeah, you can say no. And I think more people are saying no, and I think they're losing their power. If they weren't losing their power, you wouldn't see this real life stuff going on, like kind of empires toppling kind of thing. You know what I mean? I just think that yeah, we're seeing tangible proof that their system, their control system, people are saying no to it, and it's falling apart because of that. We're fighting back.
And it's hard to figure this out too, because the situation I'm in, I just had an alter come through just a few months ago, and my handlers claim he's a general, but I don't buy anything that they say. I think, you know, when they tell you things like that, I think they want to build your ego up, play head games with you, to make you think that your worth to them is more than what it is, and maybe you'll, you know, maybe you're easier to handle that way in some form or fashion. But so anyway, I have an alter that comes through. His name's Jonathan Raleigh. He's got some kind of position of authority, and the problem I have is that I immediately didn't have any trust in him, and very, very little. I mean, I have to give some trust, because everything that he said, it seems to ring true. It seems to be accurate. The problem that I have is that, you know, I'm worried about what our future is. Are we going to get out of this? And how long is this hell going to last for all of us? And he's been telling me the same thing that everybody else is getting, which is that we've got a 15 to 20 year window probably, and then everybody's getting out of this. I find that hard to believe, considering the control that they have, but it would take outside forces to make that happen, plus an internal mutiny. And what you guys are saying, yeah, the morale is very low, but you really don't know who you can trust, even parts of yourself, because when this individual comes through, you know, I'm immediately to attention, and I interact like it's a part of myself, and it feels like a part of myself, but I can't fully trust it. And one of my handlers told me, because he said to me, I said, why is this so important that I got to be here another 20 years in this physical condition? And he says, because we need to keep our loyalists alive and here. We need them, and it's out of desperation. And I laughed at him, and I said, yeah, so you need your loyalists, like the ones who, like my alter, that actually calls you a bunch of sadistic, evil bastards. And he changed the subject, but you know, that all could be an act. I could be fed a complete line of crap from this alter. And what he said before he changed the subject, he says, you know, Nathan, your alters are programmed just like you, meaning that if there's any rebelliousness in that alter, that it all could just be a head game to use against me. And that's the only one that's come through. I'm aware of 2 others, but I really don't know if any of mine actually have the wherewithal to pull it together and rebel. And this one who's high up in a position, I don't know if he has that ability, or if this is just a ruse on me to get me to go along with things. And that's what people need to understand. When their alters come through, they're not necessarily going to be on your side. Chances are, there's a better chance they're going to be working for the programs and just interacting with you.
Well, it's like I said, they'll lie to you. They'll tell you stuff that's not true all the time. They're not necessarily there to help you. They're normally there to sabotage you, like 90% of the time. So yeah, your alters aren't necessarily to be trusted. It's not that like you can't develop a relationship with them and trust them, but they'll lie to you. You know, and they'll mess with you, and they believe a lot of the times that you are the lowest common denominator, you know what I mean, and they are the powerful ones, and basically you're the fall guy. That's what you are to them. So they're gonna treat you that way, and that's why, you know, you got to be careful with alters, because unfortunately they're not. You can't just just blindly trust them, even though they're you. They can deceive you.
Right, and Ark, I asked your altar if you were the original self, and he said that you were not. Do you know who the original self is? This is Edward. I spoke to Edward. I don't know if you're aware of what he says, but I'm assuming you probably are.
Sometimes, sometimes not.
Okay. Yeah, because he mentioned that to me. He says that you weren't the original self, and I don't know.
I found out that I was born in Munich, Germany in the 50s. And my birthday is not May 16th. So like that lines up. But yeah, how do I know that I'm not an alter is one of the questions. Well, that's true. I would say that I am. I would say that every version of me is an alter. And I know that my life is artificial, that I've been artificially placed here, and that, you know, because I've had grew up in the same town with a different family. I have memories of that. So that to me means they placed me there. Like, I even took my dad from an alternate timeline out to lunch in this timeline and told him, "You're my dad in an alternate reality," and he believed me. Because you can't deny it. You know, like, he looks like me and stuff. He just looks like we could be like a lot of my family members, honestly. It does matter that I have, so people in the questions, I'm going to answer this question. Does it matter if you're all from one soul, like having an alter? Yeah, it does. And yeah, integrating an alter means they become one with you again. Yeah, that's what it means. And so, but yeah, that's what is important about the alter programming, is they're watering you down with all these different versions of you. It's like, I bring this up quite often because, you know, Tony, he's a pioneer of all this stuff. You got to give him credit where it's due. He's the one who brought up that, like, how when they'll put you back, like after a 20 and back, like he felt like less of himself, like watered down. And then after the 20 and back, it was like he felt full again. And so I really do think that, like, they are using the alters and breaking us up as a way to lessen our power and kind of mitigate our power. Because, like, I keep coming back to the point I keep coming back to, they're afraid of it. They're afraid of us, and they're afraid of our potential and our true power.
But the bottom line is, right, when we all come into this incarnation, if you like, we had an mission objective when we come here. And let's sabotage that. A lot of the time, the contracts that we have, the contracts are being signed by our alters. And, you know, like Nate said, you know, that they try to convince the alters that they're doing something good, but they're obviously not doing anything good, you know, within the projects. And also, it is important that we, at some point, are able to integrate these alters back into our core, into who we are, because, you know, whilst they're separated from us, we are actually losing part of ourselves. We are losing our power. So, you know, at some point, it's important that we can go into our system and rescue these alters. It's possible to do this. You know, that they would have us believe that it's impossible.
They're screwing with your signal so bad, man. It sounds like there are, like, ghosts in the background. Like,
sorry.
Yeah, it's weird, dude. Like, when you were talking, like, are you guys hearing that? It's like bizarre. It sounds like
it's a very
hard
loud
for me to hear because I'm on this laptop. They're messing with. I mean, they screwed my up. I can't use my webcam works anymore. So yeah, they don't want this.
And it's not been like that all day. I've been talking to Dan and everything, you know. So but I mean, I was talking in a group the other day, and when I was talking about the Monarch project and the programming, my computer went off. 2 minutes later, the person who I was talking to on the group, there's all their power went off. You know, so it's interesting, you know, that they are listening in to what we're saying. I mean, you know, with the threats and that, I mean, I've had that. I get that quite a lot with the, you know, the Omega programming, the suicide programming. So, you know, I've been only recently I discovered a project that I'm still active in. It's a classified project that I sometimes talk about now. It's actually being just reopened. It's there's a bidding war going on for this project because what we discovered is that they actually purchased these projects. So at the moment, I'm being targeted heavily by Kruger, who, they were in contact with me. They've told me they want me to return to this particular project. They said that you were only temporarily removed from this project, but now we want you back. They said there's a bidding war for this project that I was involved in, which began actually in 1973 when I was 5 years old. The first part of it was a failure, and then it re-continued when I was 10 years old. Then it became a success. It is like a sub-program to the SSP, but recently when I discovered this, they sort of said to me, "We've rediscovered you, so we want you back into this project." And they've told me if I don't accept their terms, they'll basically force me to go back. They'll come and get me. They've threatened to cut my cat's throat. I've been followed recently. My two guys in the car. I mean, I live on a farm in the southwest of England, which is the countryside. So it's in a small place where people know everyone. The cars, and literally for days, every time I was coming back to where I live, there's a car behind me, like a Mercedes Benz with two white guys in it, and literally following me down this lane. It's just one way in, one way out. And so when I stop, the car stops. So when I start walking, the car moves slowly behind me. And so when I approached the car, it's basically took off, done a 108 degrees turn and shot up the road. But I'm having this all the time, where I'm getting this same car, this same vehicle following me everywhere.
I would throw a rock.
I had that happen as well, and I think it's important to bring it up. So I actually had a guy who lived in my apartment complex, and he was following me. That was his job. It was crazy. And they replaced him with somebody else who's from the future, who I get much better vibes from, and I just leave him alone, and I just accept that they're just going to keep replacing the guy, and it's fine, or whatever. But yeah, I'm pretty sure there's a new guy, because I can tell he doesn't have any eyebrows, and he's bald, and that's what people, and he just looks like one of the people from the future. I think he's literally from the future. But yeah, and I know that there's people all around me, like, protecting me, but it was so weird. So I'm from Wisconsin, and I moved all the way across the country to Oregon, okay, to Portland. And when I moved in here, there's this guy that he had Wisconsin Bucky Badger plates frame, and then it's a sports team, college sports team, and then he had Air Force plates. And this guy would follow me around to the point where my friends are like, "Who's this guy following you?" Like, other people fucking noticed it, like normal people that aren't, like, you know what I mean, paranoid about SSP and stuff, right? Like, normal people are like, "This guy's following you," you know what I mean? Like, and so one day he moved out, okay, and he was still following me. Like, I saw him move out, but he was still following me. It's so weird. So, and he's parked. I live adjacent to a park, and he's parked at the park, like facing our apartment building. And I decided to finally go up to him one day and just be like, "Hey, so because it's like, instead of calling him out and be like, 'Why the fuck are you following me?' That's not how I approach these people. It makes you look crazy. It causes a scene. Then they bring in the paddy wagons and bring you to the mental institution. That's not how you deal with these people. You let them know what they're doing without actually letting them know that you know what they're doing." So that's what I did. I was just like, "So Wisconsin, huh?" Like, I'm like, "Yeah, I grew up in Wisconsin. Like, what about you? Are you from there or something?" He's like, "Oh, no." I'm like, "Oh, okay. Well, Air Force, you're in the Air Force?" He's like, "Oh, no, I'm not in the Air Force. This is this is my brother's car." And I gave him this look like, "Dude, that's stolen valor kind of thing. You don't drive around a car that says you're Air Force if you're not Air Force, right? You know what I mean?" And he said, yeah, I know, I should probably change that. Like, and I didn't even say it out loud. He's like, "Should probably change that." And he's just, like, literally, like, doing the thing they do where they, like, let you know that they're dangerous to you. He's like, yeah, I used to live in that apartment, like the apartment right above yours actually, and I'm like, yeah, I know. Like, so what are you? So you don't live there anymore? He's like, no. I'm like, so what are you doing just sitting in here in your car, parked in front of the apartment complex that you used to live in? Like, what are you doing here? He's like, oh, I'm just reading a book. It's like, dude, shut the fuck up, dude. Who the fuck parks in front of the apartment that they used to live at, facing it, just watching it, reading a book for any reason? Who does that? And it's just
a narcotics officer, but weed is legal where you live. So.
He was also wearing a Securitas uniform, which is a security company. Right. So I think they literally, I think the Air Force knew I moved here and hired this guy to fucking intimidate me or something. I don't know why. Because he just was hired to watch me, and I don't think he necessarily maybe knew why. You know what I mean? Like, just because they pay you to do something doesn't mean they got to tell you every little detail about why you're doing it. You know what I mean? So I don't know. It was just really weird. And yeah,
he didn't intimidate you though, did he?
No, he didn't. These people don't intimidate me. Like, they even had another thing they did is they have this guy so they can control homeless people, like houseless. You know what I mean? They're people. I try not to talk about them negatively. Like, they're fucking people. They're human beings. They're other human beings without houses. But like, they had this guy who happens to be a houseless individual, and he'd be sitting at the park. And he'd sit at this spot in the park, and basically, like, there's a railing, and then there's, like, this building, and, like, when you walk through, you're kind of in between this railing and, like, this spot, and that's where he would sit. And I was walking through the park one day, and the voice says in my head, it's like, hey, don't walk past this guy, he wants to stab you. I'm like, that's kind of weird, but I might as well just listen to it, because no harm in listening to it, and if it's right, there's going to be a lot of harm in not listening to it, so I'm just going to kind of go around when I walk past him. And then so a few days later, and I told Kat about it too. I told her about it. And then a few days later, we're sitting at the park. We go to the park.
Was it E2K that you got that warning from?
What's that?
Was it E2K that you think that you got the warning through, or just a telepathic message? And all
it was an altar coming through or something, or just my psychic intuition. I don't know. I just knew this guy wants. It's like I just knew this guy wants to stab you. Walk around him. So then the next time I encounter the same guy, and he's wearing like a mask in the middle of the city. Doesn't really fit. There's some super hyper liberal people that wear masks all the time. You know what I mean? He did not fit that description, like, at all. Like, he was like just like a normal, almost looked like a working class guy. You know what I mean? But like, yeah, but he was wearing this mask, and he just like had his hood up and everything. And he just looked so sketchy, and he's just sitting there staring. He doesn't got a phone. He's not reading a book. He's just sitting there. And I know that he has a screwdriver. He's sitting on a screwdriver. I know it, and it's because he wants to stab me with the fucking screwdriver. And, so, I get up and I start walking away, and Kat's like, I got really bad vibes from that guy. Like, what's going on with that guy? I'm like, oh, he has a screwdriver, he wants to stab me. He wants to kill me. And she's like, Jesus Christ, like, she believed me, and she knew it was true. And then later on that day, we see this guy leaving the park, and he's just fucking walking around with a screwdriver, like a sharp one, a screwdriver. You know what I mean? It's like, who the fuck just walks around with carrying nothing but a screwdriver, unless they're trying to fucking stab someone? You know what I mean? It's not like, hey, come pick me up for work. I have a screwdriver. I'm a working man. You know what I mean? Like, it just doesn't make sense. And also the fact that I sensed it, and I told her he wants to stab me with a screwdriver. So then the next time I see him, this is much later, and I thought that was the end of it, because when I saw him walking like that, I like beeped and like waved and smiled at him and let him know, like, I fucking see you, motherfucker. Like, you know what I mean? I saw him again, except this time I knew he had a box cutter. He had a fucking box cutter with a razor this next time.
Hey, you need to start carrying a hammer.
So but what I did is I just went right the fuck up to him. I propped my bike next to him, and I started filming my bike. I'm like, look at this beautiful bike. And I'm obviously like fucking filming him. Like, and I'm just like, yeah, it's such a beautiful bike, because I'm showing people, like, if this guy tries to stab me, like, I talked about this guy numerous times in interviews. I literally showed where he sits and stuff like that. Like, this guy's not gonna fucking stab me. Like, that's just bad OPSEC for them. Like that's just gonna fucking blow their whole cover wide open right now. And that's the whole reason why we do this. We hide in the spotlight, so anything that they try to do becomes bad OPSEC. It makes them look bad. That's the whole fucking point of doing this. Being a public person. Like I want as many followers as possible, because the more followers I have, the harder it is for them to fuck with me. That's just the truth, because people are witnessing it, and that's the last thing they want.
That's true. That's absolutely true. When I started taking pictures of people that were following me, started taking pictures of things that they would leave at my apartment or my house, I mean, they stopped. They physically stopped, you know, following me around, trying to run me off the road. They stop. When you start getting evidence and pictures of them, they do not like that.
No.
They do not like that.
Because they don't want to be in the spotlight, do they? They work behind the scenes, and then they want to make people think you're paranoid for what you're saying. But the more evidence you can capture of them, you know, doing it, or confronting them in, you know, like you did, Ark, you know, obviously they don't want to be seen.
Well, yeah, a lot of people get scared. You know what I mean? A lot of people would not react the way I react. They would be scared, and they would just kind of, you know, not try to confront these people. But I fucking confront them every time.
The thing is,
they want you in a state of fear. I'm sorry,
you should do though. You should confront them, because at the end of the day, with all this shit you go through, you ain't got nothing to lose anyway. So you might as well, you know, step up and you know, and say something to them.
And I would put the evidence that I would collect into a safety deposit box, because they would break into my home. So I would put the evidence into a safety deposit box so that they couldn't get their hands on it. Because they came into my house and stole my work, and, you know, poisoned my food, and, you know, of course, left cameras and recording devices and, you know, things like that. So I just started, that's what I did. I collected evidence, and then I would put it in a safety deposit box. And then they didn't know what I had, or, you know what I mean? It was like, they stopped.
Yeah, so it just shows that confronting them can go a long way.
Right.
And it's important to look at, like, with these kinds of things. Like, people may think, oh, this is just like too far out there, but I mean, look into what the German secret police, the Stasi, did in East Germany with the program of Zersetung, which they call psychological disambiguation. And that program is a psychological program that works much like what we call today TI or gang stalking. And they would go out of their way to discredit individuals. They go into their homes. You can see photos of, like, Stasi going in and bugging people's homes, putting in surveillance equipment when they were gone at work and stuff. And then how they would go around their circle of friends to cause problems in their lives, friends and family, so that those people would get the hint that their association with you is the problem that's happening. And so they would get it so that people's family and friends would dissociate from them because they committed political thought crime, essentially. And so it became an extremely complex psychological system that I think was developed. And I was talking to Michael about this yesterday, but I look at East Germany as a laboratory to continue psychologically what the Nazis had started, and the psychology and psychiatry had started much earlier in Germany. And so we're looking at something that's actually a science that was developed over decades to understand what it takes to pressure individuals and motivate them to comply with, you know, an unseen directive, to put it
right. And this is being used to turn all of us against one another. It's being used to break up marriages and relationships.
Sure.
It's being used to drive us to, you know, to want to commit suicide, and then they will drive you to the point of it and then pull you back.
Well, a big thing that they do for me is, like, you know, they've stolen, well, so much of my music, made billions of dollars off it, billions with a B, maybe even trillions. And they make sure that in my life that, like, you know, I've lived off music and stuff, but, like, you know, all the like goals that I reached and stuff like that, like doesn't really mean that much anymore. Like they sabotaged my musical career pretty much through like an ex of mine, things like that, like and just like rumors and stuff like that, and they do that to people, like they ruin their lives, and it's kind of comically easy to do, unfortunately. Like all you got to do is just say a bad enough lie about someone, and people will just believe it, because like why else would they say such a terrible lie, kind of thing, you know what I mean? So it sounds like Dan, you went through a similar thing with your career as a teacher, where they made sure to sabotage it, and they did it in some sort of humiliating way, where they made you look like some sort of sexual deviant or something like that. It's like really similar to my story, to be honest with you.
Yeah, yeah. You'll always get, and even before that, like even when I was in academia, right? Because I at one point wanted to do something like I wanted to be a political economist and go to London School of Economics, and that was actually a very realistic and attainable goal for me, and would have had the right recommendations to do so. But yeah, so a lot of it comes down to as well understanding the psychology of you very well. I talked a bit about this, Michael, yesterday, but I think even it comes down to like your natal chart, like your astrological chart. A lot of they will find weaknesses within that, right? Challenges that are a normal part of your life, and I think hack into it, so to speak, by amplifying certain things more than others. Also working with the astrological energies to maybe accentuate things that are bad turn really bad.
Well,
Things
like for instance, like
good get sort of muted down, the good, or it gets sabotaged.
although astrological energies, like with them playing into that, like there's so much of that. Like a lot of battles in wars are intentionally set on sacrifice dates, because they can't do mass sacrifices out in the open anymore. So they found ways around doing that. Like, so that's a huge, and also like for me, like, how I found out that I was born in Germany, like in the 50s, and my astrological chart has been fucked up my whole life. I'm actually a Leo. I'm not a Taurus. So like that's another way where they've just like screwed me up my whole life. Like, so, and I can't imagine, like they must do that to other people in the program. So like I wonder how many people in the programs don't even know their own birthday because they took that from them. That's just such a sad thing. But
well, I think, and that's why it's good to look at your natal chart and to really study it. It's something I did in the past year, because you see sort of where your vulnerabilities lie, and also where your promise and potential is. It's not like it's all for the negative, but I think it even talks about even how you're involved in the programs if you learn to read your chart the right way. I have my Mars is conjunct Saturn in the 12th house. It's the place of hidden things. I have Saturn, right, and Mars, two principal parts of the authoritarian structure system, like the Orion system, heavily profiled as key parts of my personality and how it works with Venus. So anyway, I don't want to get too much into the astrological thing, but to understand that there is so many different levels psychologically that are hacked into to make it very difficult, where a person could say, oh, that's just this, and try to dismiss some of this programming as something else. It's like it's all complementary and reinforces different things, from your childhood through to the astrology, through to your bloodline, through to the types of agencies and everything else that you've been involved with.
It's like we said, Dan, it's a science. These are the methodologies that they use. And they can, by changing these small little details, they can cause a lot of problems for each of us as we go forward. I mean, for me, it was like for a long time there was this big confusion about who my parents were, and it's only recently that I discovered basically that my mum that brought me up wasn't my mum. It was actually my mum, who I didn't know. She was married to my uncle on my mum's side. My uncle would have been my dad. But what I found out about my true mum, my authentic mum, is that she was a witch. She was placed into a psychiatric unit, which was a military unit, where she died. And for me, there was a kind of fusion between, you know, I have problems with this bit, but it's almost like a demonic energy that impregnated my mum. This was discovered on my records that I found, even in the Akashic records. This is recorded. So you know, for a long time, I've been told that I come from a pure demonic bloodline, which is bordering along probably, you know, the Anunnaki.
Yeah, it's the bloodline is very important for them. Where you come from, the genes you have.
Pretty fucked up stuff, you know.
Yeah, I mean it's eugenics and stuff like that, and
Definitely.
it's a lot. It's real gross stuff. A lot of it. It's these people are, you know, racist. Yeah, and they're all about their the gene pool and like having, if you have like certain bloodlines, like, you know, like for instance the bloodline of Solomon or whatever, the bloodline of Jesus Christ or whatever, these are valuable bloodlines to them, and they'll use their children in rituals, and then with the cloning aspect they're able to clone people and sacrifice them multiple times instead of just once.
I mean, when I was growing up, the people that I grew up around, you know, they were actually high level Freemasons in the police. My dad, you know, my dad was in the military. You know, the dad that brought me up, he was, you know, in the Royal Air Force. This was during the war, though. You know, he's a flight engineer, but he actually trained on the Rothschild site, which was the Rothschild site where the present day SAS are, the Special Forces. And my mum, you know, she actually built Lancaster bombers during the war in the munitions factories, but she had a very high IQ. But a lot of the family line that I grew up in, they're all military, either Navy, you know, in the Navy, in the Army, or in the, you know, in the British ones, the Royal Air Force. And I found out that my uncle was actually during World War II in Africa, who served in the newly formed SAS with Captain David Sterling. So you know, these are all different things that you know you discover about yourself.
And you know, it's interesting with that, and when you guys have all said this, and it's interesting when we look at everybody's profiles, there's an interesting theme that runs through it. I don't know as much with you here, Don, but a lot of it tends to be like you saying, like having different parents than what you realized, or this is obfuscated, or birthdays and that. And when you really look at it, what is that about? That's about not knowing who you are. And that shows you where your power is in knowing who you are. And that's one thing these bloodline families really pride, you know, like look at King Charles, and he's like, oh, I know my family history going back to Vlad the Impaler and blah, blah, blah. Like they're very proud because they get to know who they are, which gives them great power. And when we don't know who we are, we don't have that power. So that's why it's so important that we get to know who we really are. And this is what we come across when we're trying to do this healing and integration with ourselves, right?
That's why I started.
You to know. Sorry, Don. Carry on. Go on, Don. Sorry.
That's why I started integrating my alters, because I found out that my alters were the ones that were telling me, if I observed them, what my gifts were. And then I could integrate them into my life here and use those very gifts to protect myself, defend myself, and also to fight back.
Well, that explains my problem. I must have a bunch of turncoat traitorous a-hole alters, with the exception of one who's on probation, because they're not coming through to give me anything. And that makes me worried, because when I look at my personality profile as from the outside looking in, I see myself as somebody that can be very easily programmed to be an extreme loyalist to anything if the conditioning is right. And that's a strength and a weakness. So like I said, I'm kind of on my own here. I don't have some of these experiences yet or these memories because of that. And I have another question too for you guys that say that you don't know who your parents are. What exactly do you mean by that? Because, you know, was made aware by my handlers, and I had some, you know, a little bit of intuition going on there as well, that I was in a previous lifetime before this, and I died at 27, and I lived in Nevada.
I can explain this pretty well from my perspective. I've come to understand my past better than a lot of people are in these programs have been able to. So essentially, I was born in a family with someone who I believe I think my dad's actually technically my nephew or something like that, or an uncle, some sort of, you know, I am related to him, but he's not my dad. And then my mom is my daughter. She was born on a time mission in France during Montauk, and her name was Madeline. I named her Madeline. So in this lifetime, she's my mom. And so I figured out, you know, recently that Penny Bradley, you know, the heavy hitter herself, the, you know, Mars, Spiders on Mars, Penny Bradley, that's my mom, which has been kind of mind-blowing to find out. And then through John Whitberg is my half-brother, okay, and we talk fairly regularly, and I just kind of had like a moment one day where I'm like, wait a minute, so who are your parents? He's like, well, I figured out who my dad is. And I'm like, yeah, I guess that's the only one that matters because we have a different mom. And sure enough, I look in his book, and dude, this guy, whew, man, I showed it to my family, and they're like, yeah, that's your fucking dad. Like, I'm talking my biological mom and my biological dad and like family members. He looks like my dad. Like, he looks like a lot like my dad Kurt, because my dad Kurt is related to him somehow, and he just looks related to me. You can see this guy's my dad, and it's his name is Karl Emmerman. He was a U-boat captain for the bad Germans in World War II. U-boat captain. Yeah, he's piloting starships and shit like this, and he was one of the figureheads, at very least a figurehead. He was the one giving orders and stuff for Project Ibis, which was the one who resurrected the Egyptian gods, which I'm pretty sure probably the whole him birthing me was probably a ritual. And, you know, Penny doesn't remember this guy or whatever, but it was kind of funny because she's like, well, at least this guy's handsome. Because she's been shown other people that she's been forced to have kids with, and they weren't very good looking. So it's like, well, at least this time it's a guy that actually looks okay.
So you're not referring to just one timeline. Are you referring to multiple timelines, and then these people are all these different?
It is multiple timelines. It's so confusing, dude. Because like, here's something that I remember about him. Like, I remember in the programs, like, it was Jacob, my alter Jacob, which I think that's just like maybe like me. Like, maybe that's the core alter, and everybody else is the fake. You know what I mean? Like, that's the first original version of me is Jacob potentially. I'm not sure. He was the one that was at Montauk though. Him and Hans. There's two different alters that were at Montauk actually, but. I remember that I found him in the in like 1990 or like 89 or something like that, right before he was gonna die. I like portaled into his house, and he was in a wheelchair and stuff like that. He's an old man. He's gonna die soon. And I remember like asking him like, how the fuck do I get back to the reality I actually come from? I need to go there. Like, and he's like, it's impossible. You can't. It's like it's like harder than trying to find a grain of sand in a beach. It's harder than trying to find a needle in a haystack, trying to find the reality you come from. He's like, I was like, no, that's impossible. I was freaking out. I was being unreasonable because I wanted to get back home so bad. Like, I missed it. Like, I was like, you know, what if I go back and change everything that they changed to make this reality what it is? What if I just went back and changed every fucking thing? He's like, you couldn't do that by himself. He's like, I'll form an army. I'll do whatever it fucking takes. He's like, it's impossible. You are never going to be able to get back to your reality. You know, you might get lucky and find one close to it and then realize after you're there for 5 years it's slightly different. It's still not the same reality. He's like, that's my best advice to you. It's just to find one that's close. That's the best you're ever going to be able to do, is find one that's close. So when people say, oh, there's only a couple realities, or oh, there's only one reality and we changed the timeline, bullshit. It's endless. It's like Rick and Morty, like where they show it's just fucking endless, dude. It is. And I know people, this is a philosophical question. People can disagree with me on it all they want, but I've seen this shit. I've been to all these realities. I have traversed timelines. I've fucking done it all. There's countless timelines. There's so many different realities. it's all just different frequencies of the same thing. It's all just like a radio signal being put out, and like you're just tuning into different signals. Like it's endless, and that's the confusing nature of it. To answer your question, is like what reality was he in or whatever. He's in a lot of different realities. I don't know. It's really confusing. But a big part of the reason why I'm stuck here and I'm here, even though I shouldn't be, is because literal, you know, I don't want to get my channel flagged, but the bad Germans, that's what I call them to get around it or whatever. They can't even say it, even if you're against them and you're saying they're bad or whatever. But anyway, yeah, like that's the reality is like I was brought into this reality and put into this alternate reality that is very much so manufactured and astroturfed and unnatural because of like shit that they were doing, like the bad guys like were doing with time travel and stuff like that. And yeah, I have to contend with the fact that like evil fucking guy, very evil guy, is my father. But at least Penny's my mom. She's a sweet lady. But yeah, it's just kind of crazy. And then also just other stuff like while we're talking on the family stuff, like, you know, I told you guys how I called up my brother. I'm not going to name him by name anymore, but I actually, like, when I started butting heads with him publicly online, I got kidnapped through him and his father, Alexander N. Paramanov. And I got kidnapped. It was the most public kidnapping of me by any program. It was at the Swiss Hotel in Chicago. Like, I don't mean to be a broken record and tell the story again, but it's a big one. Like, it was dance night for Kat, you know, like, taking her out to Chicago to the club for Valentine's Day, and then we get back, and I just remember like some lady comes in the room when I'm trying to sleep. She's wearing the bellhop uniform. I'm like, "What are you doing in here?" And she's like, "Oh, I'm room service." I'm like, "Yeah, but aren't you like? I'm staying here for a day. Like, don't you just clean after we leave?" Like, she's like, "It's in the contract you signed." Because there was like, I remember they like turned the thing when I paid. There's like this fucking whole... I don't have time to read this shit, you know what I mean? I just scroll through it, sign. I agreed to something there. Like, I did agree to her coming in my room, and I remembered that. Like, oh, it must have been on the screen. I'm like, alright, whatever. I guess I consented. I guess I said I wanted her to come in my room at fucking 7 in the morning and clean it. That's just bizarre. That's not normal. No hotel fucking does that, okay? And then I'm trying to just go back to sleep. She's in the bathroom. I don't know what the hell she's doing. I figure she's cleaning it or something. And all of a sudden I hear tones. I hear like a tone coming out of there. And so I start walking towards her and I alter out. And then it's not me anymore and I know exactly what time it is. I apologize to her for yelling at her and asking her why she's in my room. And she's like, "Follow me." And she brings me to the next room, and who's sitting in that room? My other brother, Arkheim Ra. He's sitting in and he doesn't testify to this. Who knows if it's a version from an alternate reality? I haven't talked to him about it yet, actually, but it was him. And it was before I saw him in the sphere of whistleblowers and stuff and figured out, oh, this is my brother. But it was Arcturus was there, and probably to humiliate me, probably us. That's probably why they did it. He probably wasn't there because he wanted to be. They had a clone of me on one bed and a body bag, which they opened up, and then they made me lay down on the other bed, and Arcturus put my soul into the other body. He did this like thing. He can do that with his abilities. And then a mirror in the room opened up, turned into a portal. I walked through it, and I'm in the kitchenette on a Zeppelin. In a fucking Zeppelin. And it's just bizarre because like they have the coffee machines, they look the same, the tables look the same, they have the little sugar packets and the straws that you stir in the pathetically small, ridiculously stupidly small styrofoam cups that this reality also has. That, you know what I mean? That businesses put out so you take less of their product when it's free, you know what I mean? So you use less of it, that kind of thing. Like, and I was just like blown away by the fact like I'm in an alternate reality now. This wasn't like either it was, I'm pretty sure it was an alternate reality because that's where I was. Maldek. I was on the planet Maldek, the one that got blown up and turned into the asteroid belt. That planet. That's where I was. And I remember they didn't like it when you called it that either. They didn't want you to call it Maldek. You would get in trouble for calling it Maldek, even though everybody knew it was called Maldek. The people who owned it called it something else. But basically, I was brought there to work for King Alexander N. Paramanov. his Royal Majesty King of Kings. That's what they call him. That's not his title. He doesn't deserve that title, but that's what he calls himself. And there's been videos. Journey to Truth has done a video on him with Mary Beaver. So is Typical Skeptic podcast. I recommend people check the videos with Mary Beaver, where it's like Illuminati whistleblowing or Illuminati endgame or something like that. She talks about him, and like that was 8 months after I got kidnapped, and I'm seeing this guy. I'm like, that's the fucking guy. That's the guy. Because like what it was is like I got brought to the surface of this planet, and they bring me to like this, like, it's crazy. First, I gotta tell you about the part where I look out the windows and there's zeppelins everywhere in the sky, like everywhere, and like we're above the clouds, like we're way up, and I'm just like, I asked her, I was like, what's up with the zeppelins everywhere? And she's like, oh, people live in them. She's like, that people don't like interacting with the surface. You'll understand when you see it. And so when we get down there and you do see, yeah, it's like fucking smog, smoke everywhere, factories. This is an industrial planet, big time. Like, and but there's this temple that I get taken to, and I get taken to his royal, Alexander Permanov or whatever. I get taken to his master's chambers. And he basically just explains to me, he's like, yeah, so I brought you here. There's like, you're going to protect me. You're going to be part of a mercenary group. I've got like 20 bodyguards surrounding me at all times. You're going to be at the top high-end tier of the group of these 4 other guys, a group of 5 that are closest to me. You're going to be a part of that group. And like, he just explained to me, like, and he's like, do you have a problem with this? And I'm like, no, I've done this a million times. I know how to do my job. Like, and he's like, good. And I remember he looked at me when he said good. Like, he looked at me like, you're my bitch and I own you now, you motherfucker. I remember the way he looked at me. It was gross. Because it was kind of true. I was a slave from that point on. And then, yeah, like, it's all blurry, but, like, I remember, like, I got taken to a tailor who measured me. Then they, like, brought clothes to my room, and he sent, like, a blonde woman to go to a ball with me. There was a ball. It was, like, they live, or he's just, like, they're just, like, bragging about all their accomplishments and how they're going to fuck over their enemies. And I remember there was even a moment where he's like, I brought this guy over from an alternate reality. That's how, to fight for us. That's how powerful I am. And, like, everyone's, like, looking back at me and clapping, and I'm just like, this is fucking weird. And, like, I remember, like, the memories are blurry. Like, I don't remember it, but I remember that I almost said his name. My brother was there, the one that I was butting heads with publicly on the internet at the time. And the memory is blurry, but, like, I know what happened. Because he's, like, telling me, I'm on my knees, my hands are behind my back, and he's dressed up like Victorian, like, knight. Like, not Earth. Not just, like, a person in this time period on Earth. And he's got a sword. And he's like, you always have to be such an idealist, brother. He's like, you could just listen to them and have a nice life like me. He's like, I get to walk through portals when I go back to Earth. I get to go places and do whatever I want. I got a stipend. I got money in my bank account. He's like, you could have that, but you have to be such an idealist. He's like, you won't even remember this. He was mocking me. He's like, you won't even remember this. He's like, I'm gonna remember the wind, the way it smelled, the way the sun looked as it was setting on the field, all these things. He's like, and you're not going to remember any of this. And I told him, like, fuck you, I'm going to remember this, I'm going to remember this. And that's the reason why I remember just that moment. I was repeating to myself, I'm going to remember this, I'm going to remember this. And I was like, manifesting, like, you gotta remember this, you gotta remember this. Because if you're just fucking mocking me, like, you're not going to remember this. Like, and I was like, oh, hell no, he doesn't get that satisfaction. I'm going to fucking remember this. And yeah, that's just some of the just like crazy fuckery. Because he had the sword. I don't remember what happened after that, but I'm on my knees. I got my hands tied behind my back. He has a sword. What do you think? What do you think? He's about to kill me. And I'm sure that's how they put me back. You know what I mean? Like, back into my body. Like, when you die, you're going to see, like, people have talked about how I was in an alternate timeline, and now I'm in this timeline because the other version of me died. It's really weird. People have talked about that. It's kind of that kind of thing. Like, when he kills me, then I wake up in that room, in that hotel room, in that bed. I think that's how it works. And so I think that's what he did. And it was 3 times. It wasn't just 120 and back. It was 3 times. I went there 3 times. Like, I went, like, I don't know how they did it. Like, maybe they had multiple clones or whatever, but I know that I was there 3 times. Like, it wasn't just a one and done thing. And it was all through the Swiss Hotel in Chicago, which is weird as fuck. Like, they were in on it. Like, I'm pretty sure Alexander Peronov, like, paid them probably. Like, the vibes there were hella weird. And, like, the door, so it was like, to get to my hotel, here's my hotel, right? And then here's another, and then there's a door to it. And so, like, there's a door to 2 hotels, right? And so that way, and then when they took me into the other room, because there's that door that only those 2 rooms can get into, nobody in the hotel saw this weird lady take this hypnotized guy to another room, because they purposely have it set up to kidnap people. They literally personally, like, the Swiss Hotel in Chicago is an MK Ultra fucking hot spot where they're taking people in, like, there's portals to other realities and stuff there. So that's a fact for all you people. If you ever want to have a really weird experience, stay at the Chicago Swiss Hotel.
Hotels in general, I was going back this week and doing some research on it, because they're very much tied with intelligence agencies. There's a very strong relationship. If you look at the Intercontinental Hotel Group, that was set up through Pan Am. That's like a CIA hotel chain, and they set it up in specific locations, strategic locations for the U.S. Like, why do they have one in Beirut? And things like this. They had all these different locations, so that's a very well documented.
Yeah, and I know from my altars, like, it's hard for me to remember all of it, but the color of the wallpaper, the tiles on the floor, the carpets they use, they're all signals. Mm-hmm. Like one thing I know, if you ever go into a bathroom and it has an orange floor, leave. I don't know why, but I know that. If you ever go into a bathroom and it has an orange floor, fucking walk the fuck out. Do not use that bathroom. Like, they have symbols everywhere in planes, like certain wallpaper. Like, for instance, you know the Shining? They have that wallpaper in The Shining. I got a neighbor down the street that has the same fucking wallpaper. It's because I live in a very witchy city and people are a part of this stuff. And, like, I don't think it's a coincidence. Like, I just, Kat noticed it the other day walking by. It's not like she looks into people's homes or whatever, but you can see it. It's like they want people to see it. They're advertising it. But, like, these mean things, like these patterns and things that are put places that seem innocuous, they have a secret language, a code language that they speak with each other in plain sight, to where when they walk into a hotel, they'll know, okay, they have access to this, they have access to that. I can ask, if I use this code phrase, I'll be able to talk about certain things with the receptionist. Another thing is, when you're flying, if you see there's the Sky Club or something like that, they call it the Sky Club. Part of that, there's the real surface thing where it's people paying a per diem to get to the head of the line and have a good traveling experience. But there's also super duper weird CIA time travel portal stuff going on, like that. And you might have if you'll notice it, if you ever go to an airport and go past the Sky Miles or whatever it's called club, and you're watching these guys, these businessmen in suits and stuff, like, go in there, and it's only the wealthiest people are allowed to be a part of it, like. That's a cover for more. There's more than just, and then, like I say, you say a certain key phrase or whatever to the receptionist that is innocuous, that someone around you, they could hear it, not think anything of it, and they'll send you on your way to the right room that has a portal in it or whatever like that. That is a real thing. There's a Malibu. I went to Malibu and their City Hall. I know it has a portal in it. I was in Los Angeles for the first time in my life, and I drove there. I drove to the fucking... I remembered where it was, and I drove exactly to it. And in front of it, they have the compass symbol and a bodega, like a Japanese... or not bodega, bogata? Yeah, bogata, I'm pretty sure it's called. But, like, yeah, and it's, like, showing you, like, that symbol. When a building has, like, a compass, it's showing you, there's a portal in this building, and the number of arms on the compass means the amount of places that it can go to, and the colors on the compass as well signify what realities, or if it's just back in time, or what realities it has access to. And like I said, it's just certain stuff, like, people know it. Like for us, we're getting hitting with amnesia, and, like, for us, the secret world is just, like, totally secret. But there are people all around us who know about this shit. Like, we were sitting at, like, Portland is a crazy city, is what I'm learning. The longer I live here, like, this is a fucking crazy place. Like, we went out to eat, and I wasn't in the bathroom, but Kat like told me after we left, she's like, yeah, the girl that was sitting next to us was talking about, like, never tell your never tell your birthday to a, like, she's saying you never tell telling your friend, like, yeah, he doesn't even know, like, you never tell your birthday to anybody, especially a woman. If it's a man, they're probably not a witch. And like, she's saying all this crazy stuff, and they're like talking about one of their friends, and she's like, oh yeah, she would never be able to be a secret agent, she would never be able to be an asset. And it's just like, they're just publicly talking about this, and they know, they're like, there are people that know about this secret world and like want to be in it. And they're like, I just can feel it when I drive into this city. Like, people are way more aware of this shit here, despite the fact that there are quite a few people who are very asleep here. Like, but there still is the people who live here and know what's going on. And I also do think that's part of the reason why anything you ever hear about Portland, I can tell you I live here. This is a beautiful city. But anything you ever hear anything about it, it's just, this place is a shithole, it's garbage. And I think it's because they don't want people to come here. They know how nice it is, and they want people to stay out. That's literally what I think it is. Even though it does have its problems like any city, but it's not any different than any city in America right now. But like, once again, I'm going on a rant. Don't want to take the whole floor. I want to give you guys a talk. Give you guys a chance to talk too. I'm sorry. Sometimes I just go on a tangent and I go the fuck off. I apologize for that.
Yeah, it just seems like you needed to be able to vent. So that's what this is for. You know, we can always do. Well, we got an endless discussion, so don't worry about it. Everybody can come back. Yeah, my situation. I was wondering if I was going to talk about it today or not. I guess I should. I mean, it has to do with the kind of the Omega programming issue, but it's you know, from the beginning when they started to wake me up, they put me in the cult. They brought me together with a trauma twin, and that's when the suicide thought started, because they convinced me essentially that I was an extraterrestrial living on another planet. I was here for therapy and so forth, and that, you know, I was being reunited with family members. And so they were playing on the MyLab thing. They were twisting it and making it more positive sounding. And in the process of that, you know, I wrecked my marriage, and I met people that were connected to me, like everyone's talking here about. You know, they're connected in the programs, but I didn't understand that. I thought that they were connected in a civilization and in a family bloodline that I was in. And you guys hear that?
Yeah, someone's typing or something. Is that me?
Dan's frozen. That's not.
No, I'm not frozen. I'm just
okay.
Listening.
Man, they really don't want any of us talking.
Yeah.
So anyway, getting back to that, to the root interruption by the NSA. Pick that keyboard where the sun doesn't shine. Anyway, so yeah, I went through that phase, and then you know, I mean, everybody in the cult that I was in there with was suicidal for the same reasons, and they kept us in that state of mind throughout the entire duration of it. When I got away from it, it just intensified, and it drove a wedge between my wife and I. And you know, I was literally living two lifetimes, or actually two lives. I had the one where I was connected to an extraterrestrial entity that was actually V2K. And I was being lied to, essentially, and that was the alien love bite. That wasn't really an alien love bite. It was more or less a handler love bite. But I was conditioned, and they brought emotions out of me, and I don't know what they were, you know, directed to, other than this false entity type of, you know, scenario. But eventually, it sort of came down to the situation I'm in now, where, and I'm just going to give you a little bit of a summary of it. They've engineered a situation for me to where, you know, I have a lot of difficulty supporting myself because of spinal injury. So now I've got 2 new herniated discs. I got one in my neck and one in my back above the fusions that I had, which has been the source of all of this. So they're using that as leverage. They're promising me healing. They're going to fix me, and they want me to be here another 20 years so they can be used. The thing is what they want me to do. And I'm glad that nobody's here in the house right now, because I wouldn't be able to talk about this. But they're pressuring me through a lot of different through a lot of different ways to leave my wife and pursue another asset in the program. And so
this is common.
Huh?
This is very common.
I know, and they're playing matchmaker. They've brought emotions out. I mean, 4 years ago, that stuff started to where, I mean, it's been overwhelming to where, I mean, I was crying over my trauma twin 5-10 times a day, but there was more to it than that. There was the trauma of what was going on that I had emotional memories of, and that was causing me to black out when I would get really emotional. And I'd sit there and I'd cry until the room went dark and I couldn't even feel my body anymore. And then I'd come out of it and go back in it again. And this is different. This is more of like it's to a lesser degree than that. But I mean, I feel so disassociated from the people in my life. My son, my wife, my family, it's really, really difficult. This has been something they've done over a long period of time. And they never let in or let on to how long they've had this plan. They've made it into something where it was like a last minute thing, considering all the time manipulation, even if it was a last minute thing in another timeline or another point in this one, it was already observed and seen. So I don't think anything is up to chance with these individuals. They plan it all out one way or another. And so, yeah, I'm in a situation where they promise that they're going to heal me, but I have to do exactly what they want. And if I deviate from it, I get punished. Even if I deviate from it by just, telling them to F off, I'm not going to go along with it. I don't see evidence of it. I get pretty severely punished. And the only thing they've done is remove the remote control long COVID, that I had for a good 3.5 years. And but I've seen nothing else other than some reciprocation on the other end with the other asset. I want to try to keep this as vague as possible because I don't want to go into this personal stuff.
Nate, would you say though, like, why not call them on their bluff in some ways and be like, seriously, like, I'm sure as much as I'd like to, my life means something. I mean, you have a lot more to lose than I do here. I mean, just as part of, like, if you're looking at bargaining and negotiating, like, do realize that I know that you need me a lot more than I need you to help me through my health issues. I mean, yeah, whatever. You've demonstrated.
I said that's where the suicide stuff comes in too, because then you're in a position against them where you don't have a lot to leverage except for your use. Whatever your usefulness. Whatever your usefulness.
Obviously, your use is much higher, right? And I'm not saying like you'd self-terminate, but if you just said like you weren't going to cooperate.
I've tried that. I mean, what they do when that happens, I get the Monarch program, and I get the hypersexuality stuff, and they'll hit me that for a week or two. I can't sleep. They make it unbearable, right? I just, it's like I can't deal with this anymore. I start shutting down when that happens, and I can't get anything accomplished. I can't get my bills paid. I can't do shit. And they take me right to the brink of losing everything, and then right back again. Meanwhile, they're giving me positive affirmations, and they're telling me that, I need to follow what I'm being told to do. I need, this is a plan. It'll be better for me in the end. The person they want to put me with, I clearly identify with a spouse that I had before I was even here. And it's extremely, extremely painful. But, you get into the situation where it's like, here's the problem with me right now is that I don't know if they're being honest with me, and I don't have no leverage other than the whole suicide thing. So I have to, I threaten.
I don't know if that's just it. I mean, just not doing what they want.
Well, they make it impossible at that point because then they attack my health again to the point where, I mean, it wouldn't take much for them to prevent me from being able to walk for the next 3 or 4 months. And that's happened before. That's how bad it gets.
Mm-hmm. So the question, Nate, is why is this consent required then?
The consensory, well, here's what they explain with that is they want me to go along with this because it causes them less problems. It's as if the altar, and the other thing that they said too is this altar that's come through, and it could be others, but I know it's one because he's addressed it directly with me, that the treatment that I've gotten throughout my life was so deplorable that when he found out about it, he began resisting, and essentially he was giving them ultimatums, is what the handler said, as well as what he said to it, to a certain degree. They don't allow him and I to talk very much because they hit us with tech. And I've noticed that when he comes into the picture, like the last time I talked to him, I was right in the middle of talking to one of the handlers, or I just finished, and I went to say something else, and then he pops in and says, "Why are you talking to them? Don't ever listen to anything they say. Don't believe them. They're liars," and so forth. And then he would give me some information, and basically tell me that we're getting out of this. But also, too, he said that, if we don't, there's a way to get out when they come to take you. There's a brief moment between the time you're terminated physically, your physical death, before they can pull you out of your body, that you can get out. And most people get tied up and get held up in the confusion of it and get caught because of that. But it's like a brief moment. Now, I don't know that that's true. I've threatened them with that, the handlers, and they say, well, your alters are programmed too. So, think about that. And that's more or less telling me that I'm being lied to by another version of myself, and it could very well be the case. So they
this is the way I look at it, though, Nate. At the end of the day, and like I've said it before with you, but they have the entire power of the state, of military, of unlimited resources to throw at you, and yet they still can't get the compliance they want. I think there's something of great value to look at there. Like, what's wrong with you guys? Just little old me versus you, and you still are having such a hard time. What's really the deal here?
I think with the deal,
because I wonder how much of it, honestly, is just a lot of incredible amounts of psychological manipulation as well.
It's conditioned.
I think it's the main thing to always keep in mind with any of these things.
Yeah, right? But a lot of it is also, it's to do with the deep programming, and it's to do with the implants. And it's to do with the control they have over the different alters, that we have. And these are, there are some type of contracts in place, and they're quite difficult to get out of those contracts. And these contracts, I believe, are, like you said, Dan, this has been going on a long time. This is not, MK Ultra and all that. This is nothing new. It's been happening a long time. It's only now that they've basically cottoned on to how to use this psychology and this science and with this technology to control assets. To control us from birth. So it is difficult. It's not impossible, but it's difficult to get off of them. Off of the contract.
No, obviously, we're all still dealing with it.
Immediately, you got to hear this.
And they use, they use the programming, don't they? We're heavily targeted through, through the suicide programs. I mean, whenever I do a podcast and speak about it, literally a day or 2 days later, I'm at the brink of, if I had one, putting a shotgun in my mouth and shooting myself.
Right.
It's like really fucking difficult. They fucking took like everyone on the projects, they took everything from me. And and you're fighting a battle all the time, every fucking day.
I know. I totally sympathize with anyone here dealing with that, because I do as well. Like, it's hard to understand. I like to get into the minutia of some of it, though. Like, like I've dealt with it for over, 30 years now, 35 years, like suicide programming and things like that. So I just want to, like, just as a YouTube thing, disclaimer here, like, everybody obviously get counseling, seek help, never do this as a thing. We're doing this so that we can help people so that they don't commit any self-harm.
Well, this is anti.
Get the resources to help you, because we're not condoning that in any way. We all are doing this because we deeply care and don't want anyone in our community to do that kind of thing.
And that is the unfortunate truth, is there are people who do follow through with these things, and also just even self-harm in general. I've been dealing with that. I've been punching myself in the face, and it's not me doing it. That's scary as hell.
Yeah,
so
they make you do it to yourself. They actually did that to me just a few weeks ago.
Bullshit them.
Yeah, it's not fun, and it's
it's
scary for anybody else around you that sees it too. It's like, what the fuck? This person's just beating the shit out of themselves.
Right, you can't explain that.
it can happen too through things like you mentioned, like the hypersexualization type of thing, Nate, that can occur, and then you couple that with, say, then the person combines that with a drug bender, right? And now they're like really completely spinning their wheels. It's
Right.
amazing how it can elicit very unusual behaviors in this person, right? Like things that are also even comforting behaviors to people. And there's just all these types of programming. Like a big one that I am working really hard against presently is against the nomad programming, which is the one of just like constantly like starting up, building, and then tearing down and then restarting again, because I've been in that cycle for
Wow.
25,
We've
30
got that
years,
in common. We've got a lot in common because I've got that in common too. I've
right?
lived so many different places. It's crazy. I've never lived across the world like in a foreign country like you have, but just been all over the United States, really.
Mm-hmm. So that's a big one I heard about years ago. So like right now, my big challenge is to get to the 2 year mark of living in the same place for 2 years in a row. I haven't had that in over 30 years. You know, and living across 8 countries, working in them, and everything else too. Like it's a really hard thing because Canada's a big trigger for me. Like being here at times is extremely oppressive. I all the things that you guys mentioned, like whether it's Don or you or Michael, I mean, Nate, I encounter the same things, and it's sort of in my face, right? Like there's a military building just a few blocks from where I live, and totally nondescript building. I totally know that has significance beyond just being some, you know, nondescript building. This is beyond just a regular one because it's not even listed as such. It's just got a crazy coat of arms on it with a logo in Latin saying "So we go to the stars" when you translate it from the Latin, and that's just like right up the street from me, right? And so like being
That's
here,
insane.
yeah, and like it's got like the crest and it's got the double-headed eagle and the whole bit, you know, like this is and it's just a plaque and it's got all these security cameras and no windows outside of it, and it's in this small town here, and it makes no sense anything like that exists, right? So we deal with it. So like, but sometimes it's like dealing with a bully. You've got to confront the bully. Like Dawn was great with what she did, like, you know, like getting the information, like taking the pictures back, like, yeah, you know what, I'm not going to cower. Here, you assholes, I'm going to take pictures of you now. I'm going to do this. I'm going to collect evidence against you. I'm going to like have like a good diary and a timeline and stuff like this so that you can't try to confuse me. And I've been in that position before. Like you mentioned people living in your building. Like the one time I was under intense observation in Mexico, and I was going through a lot of things like the MyLab stuff, gang stalking, everything. People above me were living there because it's sort of like a, you know, sometimes you have short, like long-term tourists living in these places. And I totally knew that these people were there for the purpose of watching me, and they were performing like black magic and everything on me. I went upstairs to confront them once because they were doing all this stuff like flooding the floor so it would leak through the ceiling and go all over my apartment while the landlords were out of town for a while. And I went up to confront them, and I saw they had, and the one guy I could tell right away, evil as anything. They had a mirror that was it looked like it came out of like the court of Louis the 16th or 14th or something. It was all gold, giant ass 9-foot mirror that totally was out of place in the room. And I'm like, they're using, oh my God, these people are more evil than I thought. They're using that as a portal. I knew like right away, right? This kind of thing. And so like it becomes very weird, like you were saying with I'm sorry, I'm sort of jumping around here a bit, but you know, like, so I'm trying to look at the types of programming, even the nomad programming, the suicide programming, right? And they all sort of overlap and work with each other in different ways. So it'll be like the job, and then issues within that, and then suddenly, or that happens, and then it does the finances, and then the next thing you know, it's like your social situation explodes, and it'll actually just sort of like detonate every aspect of your life at the same time. It'll just be like, let's set them up, and then let's tear it down. Set it up, tear it down. And sometimes it's, you know, our choice or whatever, but what I try to do now is like, so now I fight it and I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to play into this. Like, I'll sort of see like the program's trying to execute, and I'll just like try to go into the observer mode and be like, not playing that game, not playing that game, right? Like if it's the even if it's the self-harm one, like when I get blasted sometimes, it'll be so bad, it's not just bad feeling. The thought will repeat sometimes as much as like 5 times a second. In 1 second, it will repeat. It'll just go boom, 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 boom. And it's like that for like sometimes hours, days, with barely a break. It'll just keep going on and on and on. And you're just like, wow. Like,
yeah, they told me to shut up for 2 days. All I heard was shut up, shut up, shut up, shut up, shut up, shut up.
Was this recent, Dawn?
No, this was when I was being really heavily targeted. It was just like, shut up, shut up, shut up. And I was like, holy shit, man, shut up.
And you think that's V2K probably?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, most likely.
Yeah, they did that to my dad. So talking about this, and this is, you know, kind of hard to talk about, but my dad actually did follow through with the Omega programming at one point. And so my family came home to him on the ground. He had done the whole to his neck, you know, and he survived. He survived. So he survived miraculously after the incident, and
that's the specific one that I get, Arkheim. It's specifically the Masonic ear-to-ear thing.
Yeah, that's what it was. That's what
and the image will be repeated like constantly. It's like
what he told me. So
doing that kind of message.
And I asked him about it, you know, and which is kind of hard to talk about. But I asked him about it later on in life, and I was pretty young when this happened, so I didn't really understand what was going on very well. I fortunately didn't like see it. Like they made sure I didn't see it. But like he told me that everything went red, and that like demons were talking to him, and he said that they were saying over and over again that like if he didn't kill himself, they would kill his family. And I don't know, there's like a tapping noise going on somewhere.
Yeah, they're at it again.
But basically,
telephone too.
Yeah, so it's just very real, like the Omega programming, and he really did follow through, and it was a miracle that he survived, and that was a traumatizing experience for my brother, because my brother did find him. It was my brother who found him. And so again, and you know, to know that like my dad like was like that thing happened where he could have died. That was somebody. There's somebody behind that targeting him. That just totally like.
Well, that could be done too from the actual ritual abuse as well, right? I mean, I think specifically that there's the different types of Omega programming are telling you which kind of program is involved too. For me, I think the one with the throat thing is a very, you know, it's definitely dealing with the more Masonic side, because this is sort of related to like if you reveal the secrets. So I want to like sort of tie it in with that, right? So like I know with the Mormons, their temple ceremony and part of like old Masonic ceremonies, when you're going through the secret rituals, you are sworn to secrecy upon not only death, but death in a various variety of manners. And one of them is, of course, is that may you do this one, draw a joker face on your neck, shall we call it, and that's specifically for people spilling the beans, you know, like talking about things. So
yeah, which is what he was doing.
This is the way you want to. This is the way you would hurt yourself. A lot of people understand if you're going to, it'd be like a far more effective means would be a firearm.
And that's what he was doing. When I came out publicly, he has a twin sister, and she lives in a different state. I don't see her as much, but she reached out to me and she told me that you know, she's like, yeah, I remember like Kurt started talking about like aliens and like being abducted and all this stuff, and I kind of believed him, almost like it kind of made sense. But they started talking about like Jesus and thinking he was like Jesus and all this stuff and God, and I think that was the V2K. Is that's very they'll start putting voices
Religious
in your head.
programming is really big when they try to do this preemptive programming, this like pre-bunking thing. Yeah, they'll redeploy it into the religion for a while.
Yeah, so he got really into God for a while, and then
That phase too.
and just all sorts of kind of loony. Well, you know, to be perfectly fair, I mean, my dad, he's pretty mellow, pretty with it, but for a long time, he wasn't very grounded in reality because of what he went through. You know what I mean? Like constantly having his feet in the door of other realities and talking to people who aren't there and things like this. So it's been, you know, is I guess I learned a lot from it though through my father, and he's my hero. He really, to be honest with you, because like he's still with us today, and he's one of the most kind and compassionate people that I know. And you know, this is the fake dad, but he raised me. You know what I mean? So he's my dad for us in this life, right? Whether it's manufactured or not or whatever. I'm just being technical when I say that. I consider my mom, whether she was my daughter from a time mission or whatever, I consider her my mom. You know what I mean? Like I call like, but like yeah,
Have they heard you say this about them? I mean, how do they relate to? Because I've always wondered about that.
oh yeah. I told my mom, and she's just like, I don't really understand it, but you know, I believe you. And my dad, he just kind of knows like that he's all known all this stuff already, so he's not really shocked by it. And especially, you know, when you show them the picture of Carl Emmerman, the guy who is technically my biological father. Like, I mean, he looks like my dad a lot. He looks like a wood. Like it's eerie to see his photo, and it's kind of undeniable. Like, pretty much everybody that sees that photo agrees that it's probably the closest thing to evidence that like hardcore like proof that I have is how much this guy looks like me, which you know, and people say I should do a DNA test, which I do wonder about, but with all the weird shit that they can do, like who's to say that it will be accurate? If I, you know what I mean?
You'll get the actual results.
Exactly. So that's kind of one of the reasons why I've never even done it, is because it's like, who am I to believe that it's actually going to be accurate if I do it? So I don't know. I am interested, but
getting them to test that and get an answer.
because like Penny's like convinced like if I took a biological test to figure out where I come from, it'd come back and say she's my mom. But I don't think it works that way. You know what I mean?
No, just like they lie about your blood group. They're definitely going to lie about your DNA, right?
Yeah.
Like a lot of people don't even know their correct blood type because they'll lie about that. No, fortunately, I know mine because mine happened outside of country. So, but I bet if I did it in Canada, they wouldn't have let me know.
Well, if you need a transfusion, they better get it right.
I mean,
Yeah,
one of the things that happened to me in regards to, you know, triggering for me is, you know, recently having a chat with a programmer who was taunting me about when they took me as a young child and, you know, did what they did to me to try to split my mind and disassociate, you know, so they tried to sexually shame me in telling me, you know, that they'll send me the images what they've taken from the films of when they filmed me being basically abused as a child. So you know, I find, you know, that's quite heavily triggering for me, and that's when I get these, you know, these type of thoughts, and you want to self-harm, but you know, it's a constant battle to you know, to fight it and to refuse to do what they want you to do. And you know, and it is also to do with, because you're talking, because you're sharing this information with others, you know, as I said, not just in our communities but outside of them, you know, and getting this information out. But the targeting does come heavily after you've spoken out. But you know, like Dawn and everyone else here, you know, you refuse to give in to that because, you know, you're you want to do something right. there's a lot of things that we've done on these projects and programs that's obviously not, not good, but but we've not had no choice in that really, but we can do a lot of good with, by getting this information out. But I mean, recently when they, when they were telling me this, they were telling me, if you enter into a relationship, because I'm single, if you enter into a relationship, we will get that person and we will do something to that person if you continue to speak, or if you don't come back to this sodding project that they want me to come back to. So it's all these threats. But at one time I said to them, well, you know where I live, don't you? And they went, going, yeah. And I said, well, let's meet at a certain time. And I said, but I know you're not going to turn up, are you? And they never did, because it's like what you did, Ark. When you're confronting.
Yeah, sometimes it's like that. And one of the things that they've been saying to me lately for a while, a couple of months now, is they said, we want you to try to fix things with what? We want you to get it out of your system. We want you to figure out that no matter what, and sorry about the feedback, it's because of this microphone and this laptop. I'm having issues. I can actually hear it. But what I'm saying is that they want me to explore every avenue I can to save my marriage, so that they can prove to me that it isn't possible and that they're in control. And that's one of the things that they've done. And I frankly, I believe them that it's probably too badly, it's too badly gone at this point to fix it. I don't know where to start. And if I had a fair opportunity, it would involve them not being involved at all. And that would be probably easier. But at this point, I don't know. I'm too fucked up, and my life's too messed up, and I don't know what my future is. And they hold all the cards, and if I want to fight them, then I may as well get ready to to live in a car or something. So I'll probably lose everything. But they've turned the screws to me all the way. I mean, it really can't get a whole hell of a lot worse at this point. And I just, I live one day to the next is the way I do this now. And, I'm partially numb, but I'm overly emotionally damaged and constantly crying and stuff about it. But at the same time, I just can't bring myself to even try to fix things with my wife, because it's like I'm conditioned to know that if I try, they'll ruin it.
Yeah, well, that's part of the frustrating things, why it's leading people to have this ideation and other things, right?
Yeah, they don't want me to hurt myself, and that's the funny thing. They don't want that anymore. They want me to stay here, give them another 20.
No, but what I'm saying is it's normal to elicit that in you, right?
What's that?
Anyway.
Well, sorry, what did you say, Dan?
Through going back and forth. Yeah, I'm just trying to think of it, because it's very dire in that way, and I mean, I'm interested too in things that you guys have found as effective tools in fighting back and blasting back against it at times, because we obviously have had to do it multiple times, and I feel for you, Nate, because it's like you rarely get a glimmer of hope coming in, and I think whatever we can do to share in terms of ways of strengthening our spirit and our resolve with each other would be a good thing to talk in terms of practical things, because we could go on all day about the types of things that are done in that, which is good. It's good to be aware and not feel alone, but it is important we do those things too, because all I know is when you go to touch the void burns like, but it's a cold kind of burn. I don't like touching the void myself. I really do everything I can to not touch that. So what do you guys do?
Well, Dan, I know that what worked for me, because I just got tired of their constant harassment. And I was like, they've got to be plugging in somehow. There's got to be some kind of way that they're plugging in. So what I did was I got the idea that it was my chakras. It had to be my chakras. And So I laid down on the bed and I started to meditate, went into meditation. And then what I did was completely flipped my chakras around. I put the red one at the top and the orange one and then the yellow one and the green one and, you know, on and on. And when I got to the end, I heard, no, don't. And then it was over. And then this huge electrical shock went through my body. It's so pronounced that I actually came up off of the bed, but I didn't hear them anymore.
Mm-hmm.
They had no more control that way. So that was one. I've taken, like I said, I've taken pictures. I don't take their threats. If they threaten me and if they come onto my property or around my family, and I know their energy signature, so I know when it's them, you know, and not when it's just like the person's destiny or whatever. I immediately respond back by attacking them, and I do not show any mercy. You know, they don't show any mercy. They didn't show any mercy to me. I am not going to show any mercy to them. And I am a warrior. That's what I am. And that's how I go in. And then, of course, taking all the physical evidence. When I started taking physical evidence and keeping it stashed out of my home, you know, into a safety deposit box, that really helped too. And then gradually I just, you know, my altars, I blended them into myself. And I began using their abilities because
that's called integrating your altars. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what. And so, if one was telepathic, I would integrate that one, and then I could use telepathic abilities. You know, and that's.
So I like what you're saying here, Dawn. Is you're saying like you had to go within. It was sort of like the challenge was so great, you had to find whatever resources there were. And that's what helped you innovate techniques to adapt to the fight in a way.
Yeah,
yes.
and they
and
do not.
I think probably all of us have done that, our own things that have done that. That's why I'm interested.
Yeah, that's the last thing they want is for you to go inward, because then their plans backfire on them, and you start using. You become empowered instead of them taking your power. You become empowered, and then you become incredibly dangerous to them, and they will back off, hoping that you will too.
One of their strategies against that is to put you in a compromised situation and then offer you things so that you see them as the way out or the solution to the situation that they put you in. And they can be very persuasive in what they do to you and how they do it, to where, you know, like in my situation, God, I hate this feedback. It's like trying to talk on the phone when the NSA's messaging. They play my voice back to me. But what they're trying to do is they're basically just using it as a leveraging tool against you. They want you to, you know, to conform. And I got to stop. It's really hard for me to listen to myself talking.
I know what you're saying, though, Nate. It's a good point. The situation engineering.
Doing that. He's got the bullshit today.
Akeem, when you mute, Nate doesn't echo any longer.
Well, I'll make sure to mute when I'm not talking then. Sorry about that.
That's all right. They're screwing with everybody. I couldn't sign in. You know, you're having problems. I have no webcam. Who knows?
I was like majorly triggered earlier. I'm sorry for leaving the way I did, but it was just better than like putting it on camera. I just had to reset myself there.
Would you like to talk about it a little bit? I mean, it's
just like all I know is like if I'm just like getting like extremely, I'll just see something like it's just like Michael's trying to say like, so I'm always trying to like analyze it so to understand it better, right? It's just like how sometimes the self-harm stuff will come out of the blue. You can be going from a perfectly good spot in your life.
Oh yeah.
And then and sometimes you can even sense it a day or two before it even happens. And then it just boom. And you're in the bog all over again. And I hate that because I'm like, damn it, I'm actually working really hard at enjoying my life right now and having gratitude and vibing high in that, and then it can still come and hit, especially after doing these kinds of things like we're doing now, helping people. So I just wanted to say that. I found too, though, that sometimes it's like when we're not feeling well, sometimes the best thing to do is to go out and help others. And so for me, actually, one of the things that helps me raise my own vibe is by working on helping others with some of their issues. And it gives me confidence as well. Like, oh, I do have worth in other people's lives. So my life has significance. And then I realize I have different talents and abilities, and I get confident with my talents and abilities. And it sort of makes it easier for me to feel that I have a chance of working on healing myself. The thing like about the triggering earlier is one thing I've really tried to practice in the last year. It's the same as like we were talking with the nomad stuff earlier. It's just like if I have a really strong compulsion that doesn't seem characteristic of the time, then I know that's sort of like an attack, right? Like, why is this so strong? And it's really hard because it's just like how hormones disguise our feelings and thoughts. Like we could have like, let's say we had a hormonal imbalance in some way. It could unnecessarily cloud our way of thinking, right? And so we do have there's the remote influencing things that go on, that whether you were looking at it as psychotronic weapons or it's just post-hypnotic things or anything else that's going on to just trigger you. And sometimes, like, rather than let myself get caught into those dramas, though, I try to see how far I could do it, but observe and then just sort of detach and reset if I can, and then come back at it, and then just sort of stop the I notice that you tend to get a lot of the stories coming at you. The thoughts will come at the same time as these highly irrational emotions that are just sort of really coming to the front. So yeah, I think sometimes learning that we can be, they've done a very good job at making us our own worst enemies. And so this is hard because it ruins our reputation to our family and friends and other people, because we can get hit with triggers that elicit different behaviors and speech and things that we'll regret, irreparable repair sometimes, right? And then you just sort of have to reset and be like, no, that's not the case, and like really reaffirm it with what you know to be true. I don't know if that's a ramble, but I hope that was helpful.
It made perfect sense to me.
And I get excited, like I help people and I'm like, oh good, like that person feels a little better, even though I managed to like get somebody to like laugh a bit or anything else. Where we are when we connect our hearts, it seems to be a way that we can beat them. And like even when we have these panels like this, we start to combine. And Don, you were talking about the chakras earlier, like we combine, like, because the heart, that's the thing that does the portals, okay? That's why they can't do this shit easily. That's why they need us, because like the heart is the thing that creates the portals. Pineal gland can deal with the astral realm and everything else, but the actual quantum jumping and everything else occurs through the heart. The heart is everything. So if we work through our heart energy and network that way, I think we can help heal each other too. I think that's what needs to be done more. And that comes through compassion. And we have, like, I've done it before where I've looked at it this way, and it's a good construct I've created, is I'll look at it and say, like, if there was 5-year-old me, let's say there's grown me goes to meet 5-year-old me or 7-year-old me or whatever, another version of me that's younger, would I be hard on that person, or would I have like so much compassion for younger me? And how excited would I be to meet that person and want to be encouraging and nurturing and that for that being, right? So if I would do that to myself at a younger state, why wouldn't another version of me have the same compassion for myself. So I think some of this comes to learning to how to have compassion for ourselves. And if we have to create a thought experiment, like an older version of you comes along, is like, hey buddy, you're doing a good job there. Don't worry. Like, proud of you, doing great. Think of that other self. That's like your higher self, and it's really wanting you to be doing well. And I think that's a great way to like help visualize how we to have compassion for ourselves and appreciate who you are in the moment and have compassion, but also in a way where we're trying to bolster ourselves up at the same time. I don't know if that's helpful for you guys, but that's one thing that I've used.
Yeah, it's an exercise I haven't done, but I have noticed there's other parts of me that aren't hijacked that appear to be influencing me and trying to get me through this, like trying to get me to catch up. And I've said to Arkheim like 2 or 3 times now, I said, I feel like we've already done this, and it just constantly feels like that. And when something falls into place and several variables come together to make that happen, it feels like it just fell into place, but it's not the first time that it happened. It's a strange experience. Anyway, I just wanted to add that. But what else would I want to say? I'm good for a moment. I just had to gather my thoughts.
Yeah, it's messy. This stuff, right? It gets really messy. I think it's a good show. I think it's been a really good show, by the way, Arkheim, because you know what? I think we've really shown a lot of the emotional vulnerability and messiness to this stuff, and it's good because.
Yeah, I think that's kind of turning what this is. I think that's what this is turning into. I think the idea was kind of to collaborate, testimony, unify our community more, and maybe we'll end up with that as a byproduct of this. Who knows? But I think the main thing is we're just talking, and it's just nice to talk. And I feel like even if we had this conversation without an audience, like it'd be great to have these conversations. But I think the fact that we do this publicly, it seems to help people, and I think that is a powerful thing, and that we should all kind of be happy that despite all the things we've been through and maybe a lot of the experiences we've had, we're essentially starting to swing the pendulum in the other direction. And I think that we are creating positive change, and I don't think that being defeatist, helps. Like, we have to remain positive because that's the only way you can win, is to believe it's possible. So, I guess maybe that's the note we can end on.
Yeah, and I like what was said earlier though about why we do this, because when you feel like you have nothing and no self-worth and they've taken everything from you, and you participate in this and you see that it's having a positive impact and it's helping you and it's helping the people that you work with when you do it, for me, it gives me something to look forward to and something to hold on to that's a part of myself that they've been trying to take away, which is who I am. And
yeah, to see that I've gotten people like inspired. To see that I've gotten people that, I'm sure there's certain people who, due to the work that we're doing, have become public themselves and realized that they are also in these programs and things like that. And then they also start coming on these shows and giving their own testimony and filling in their own pieces to the puzzle, because we all have our own unique memories that kind of help paint a more clear picture, more and more concise picture of what really happens in these programs. And so I feel like that's also maybe a little bit about why we do this show. But to wrap things up, I would really just like to give everybody else the floor to let people know where to find them, or like what projects they're working on, etc. Like obviously, Michael, you could tell people where to find your book and stuff like that. So yeah, if you guys want to just like kind of let people know where to find you.
I was just going to say, we always have to remember, despite everything that's happening to us and all the fear that is, that they try to push on us, we have to remember that we're incredibly powerful individuals, and it is about raising your vibration, and sharing. I mean, some people have said to me, to go onto these programs, you've got to be weak. this is the reason they choose you, but that's not the case. The people that are in the SSP and the super soldier futuristic programs, they're incredibly strong individuals.
Yeah, you have to be.
And this is the reason why they choose us, and and this is this is the information that we got to continuously share with others, to show them that that you are incredibly strong, and they are actually afraid of us. I mean, if you have somebody who wants to control you, surely that means they're afraid of you, because you wouldn't need all this control otherwise. And that's something always to remember.
Yeah, I think that's an important point, and I really enjoyed.
Like they got all the resources ever, they still can't do it. It's so
the evil takes deception in order to get cooperation. No one wants to do that except for some individuals, but not us. And they have to lie and deceive and mind control us to do this horrible shit to each other and everyone else.
I'm so grateful to the TIs that first came out, and to Nate to ask me to speak publicly, because if it hadn't been for their bravery, I would have gone absolutely batshit crazy by now, because I did not have any idea what was happening to me. I knew something was, and I knew it was out. It was outside of myself, and but I just couldn't believe that people were going through this much trouble for me. And so that means that we are incredibly strong, because if they can take us down, we are the front line for the human race. If they can take us down, then the rest of the people that they'll be a piece of cake. They just, but we've got the will, the intelligence, the gifts, and they're trying to take us down, and that's the reason. It's because we are incredibly strong and incredibly gifted.
I mean, that's true, Dawn, because I believe with disclosure will come through our communities, and we are the front line, really, that will play a big part in bringing these arseholes down. They're not as strong as what they think they are.
No.
They use the art of war. They conceal themselves from that. But the best way really to deal with them is to learn about your enemy, in order to break them. If you've got if you've got soldiers, running towards a castle, so to speak, the best way to beat that enemy is to watch what they do, what their strengths are, what their weaknesses are. This is the art of war, and this is the way you'll get through their armor, and destroy them. And each one of us are bringing each of us are contributing to this. And the war, there is a war going on, and we're not the ones that are going to lose it. Well, I do truly believe that we will eventually win.
Yeah, I feel that. I feel the same way. It's just a matter of when and how much suffering from right now to then we're going to have to endure.
Maybe a bit more. The great thing though is now for them to maintain control, they have to overplay their hand. Okay, and as they overplay their hand, they become more obvious. As they become more obvious, we get even more and more of the normies to even wake up to the situation that they wouldn't otherwise look at. So this is how they end up getting taken down eventually, right? They tried to do, in the past few years, they tried to do 30, 50 years of social engineering in 2 or 3 years, and it was just too obvious to a large part of the population. Yeah, they got some people or whatever, but that's what's happening. And so us being able to maintain our integrity, to be able to share our wisdom with each other, and new people coming into the truth is important. And they're just going to continue to be in desperation mode. I mean, it's quite amazing, right? Like, we can have fun even watching the current election. I mean, the whole thing's such a clown show that it's making it more and more obvious. The P. Diddy things, all these things are making it more and more obvious. This is to break. We can't talk about the depth of the problem really going on until people can get used to the idea of people can accept the idea of P. Diddy or Epstein and understand these things go mainstream, it's a little bit easier to get into the bigger stuff when that comes down the road. But we have to take some baby steps in order to bridge the public mind, just like we had to go through some of those in order to get to the places we're at currently. And that it's a matter of, it's siege warfare. We have to hold out as long as we can. It's the real key.
But we will, Dan. You know, we're not going to give in. You know,
my patience is endless, therefore I always win.
Exactly. You know, we're not going to give in to these. I mean, you know, they can throw out, and they have done. You know, since their childhoods, thrown all this shit at us. But you know, we're still here now. We're still talking. We're still resisting them, and we're not going to give in, and we will bloody well win.
Oh yeah, stubbornness is a great quality to have. Like we were saying earlier, I'm just so stubborn about it. It's just like, no, I just refuse until I see you guys lose. That's all it comes down to. And this is a battle of a will. Like if you've ever had a staring contest with an animal or a child, like you gotta know, it's about how long you can maintain that stare, and you got to be able to maintain it and have it and focus it, and you will beat it. But if you break away your eyes, if you're the first person to break contact like that, they've won. So it's so important we just keep that. Remember, it's a staring contest, and our eyes are getting watery at this point, and we're starting to tremble, and we're barely able to hold it. We want to blink, but we can't, and we just got to keep it, and we're there. We're getting close, you know. So I just want to put some good positive energy to the end of it there as well.
And in order to do that, Dan, we have to work together, and we have to support each other. So for now, this is like a group therapy podcast, and it's going to turn into a public swear soon. And then it's going to morph into different things. And that was the vision I had. So I want to thank everybody for being here and being part of this. And thanks to Arkheim and Kat for, for hosting this whole thing. And I may have come up with the idea, but all of you are making it happen, which is, absolutely awesome. And an idea is useless if it's not executed. So, and I think this is the right time to do this. And it's at the point where not only in society we're at the point of self-destruction, but our community's a total wreck. And we need to come together and heal each other. And thankfully, we're actually getting a start at that. And I see this as one of those starts. And it needs to increase. It needs to be propagated. And we need to do it across the board, privately and publicly. I got tired of having conversations like this in private. And I thought it makes better sense. If we can handle our issues enough to talk on camera, then we can help a lot of other people. And I want to thank everybody for being here today to do that.
Thank you, all you guys. I appreciate it. Thank you, Arkheim.
Yeah, I definitely need to have you guys on the show at some point.
Yep.
Like that would be really nice to have Michael and Don separately for an interview. That would be really nice. We'll have to get in contact. We'll have to have Nate send your info to me or something like that. But yeah, thank you everyone for being here, and thank you to the audience. We're gonna end things now, and we'll be back next Wednesday with another show. So take care, everyone.
Bye.
All right, I'll see you guys later.
Take care.